After turning himself into a demon, he was ultimately defeated by the one they called the hero. The hero looked down on his fallen foe, finding it pitiful that he had been swallowed by darkness, and questioning why he would become a demon. Lying defeated, the man cursed the commoner hero, but declared that if his own death was enough to secure victory, it was a small price to pay. His body began to dissolve into black mist. He recalled his past, a time when he was just himself, unable to prove his family's innocence without resorting to demonic power. But even in this state, his soul persisted, though it was a hellish existence, constantly being fed to the demons. He lost track of how much time had passed. A few years, perhaps over a decade. No matter how many times he wished for the torment to end, it never did. At last, only the final, remaining fragment of his soul was left. He thought with a sense of relief. But finally, his consciousness focused, his thought continuing. Now, finally, I am. A young boy shot up in bed, gasping for air, his eyes wide with shock. He looked around the ornate, unfamiliar yet familiar room, wondering to himself if this was his own. His gaze settled on something shining brightly. A wave of nostalgia washed over him as he observed it. He took a deep, shuddering breath. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, he could breathe. Following that realization, more sensations returned. His hands, they were moving. He had a body of flesh again, and a voice to speak with. He pushed himself up, drawn to the window. The sunlight felt warm on his skin under a fresh, clear sky. For a moment, he wondered if this was heaven. But the thought was immediately crushed by the memory of his fate, how he was trapped by demons and became one himself. This couldn't be. As he grappled with this impossibility, a shimmering board of light materialized before him. It offered congratulations for becoming something called a seeker and prompted him to open a menu. His mind raced. His soul should have been completely destroyed. If that was true, then what was this? Pondering the strange situation, he decided to comply, uttering the words, "Open menu." He stared at the floating letters, a form of magic completely alien to him. A part of him warned that it could be a demon's trap, a cruel illusion. But as he stood there, he realized it was the only clue he had to understanding his circumstances. With a nervous swallow, he committed to his choice. The menu responded, expanding to reveal a list: status, skills, quests, message box. The terminology was foreign, but he instinctively reached for status. A new window opened, displaying information that stunned him. He was identified as Salim Bergman, a 14-year-old male with a title of Seeker and a level of -51. The name was his own. He was the eldest son of the Duke's house. The age sent a jolt through him. 14? He remembered becoming a demon at 17. And after the hero's victory, he was certain more than a decade had passed as his soul was consumed. The timeline was impossible. Turning to a mirror, he saw the reflection of a boy with a lean frame and silver blonde hair. A distant memory surfaced, his mother praising that very color when he was a child. He then recalled how, by the time he was 17, the vibrant shine had faded, becoming dull and rough. None of this made any sense. He turned his attention back to the glowing menu, hoping for more answers. He selected the Skills tab, but the panel that appeared was empty, displaying only 2 words: no skills. His eyes widened in disbelief. The revelation was staggering. No skills at all. He remembered possessing a respectable talent for magic. Shaking his head, he opened the message box and found a welcome message. It defined as Seeker, as one who trains on a righteous path, accumulating virtue through good deeds. He let out a sigh of resignation. So, this was a path to train his heart, to prevent him from falling to demonic temptation again. The definition was vague, but the intent was clear. He stares at the system window, a new quest objective glowing before him. Reach Seeker level 30 to resist the temptation of demons. He recalls his status, something around level 50 in his past life. But a sudden jolt of horror courses through him as he sees the truth. Salim Bergman, male, 14. Seeker level, -51. -51. The number is staggering. He realizes that if this is the past, then his fall to the demon's temptation will happen all over again. He must raise his level, but how? The shock of this revelation plunges him back into memory. All he ever wanted was the power to make them pay. He recalls his older self, consumed by this desire, knowing it would make him an enemy of humanity, yet embracing it fully. With that power, he could finally defeat the hero who humiliated him, the arrogant Marquis's daughter, and the haughty little princess who looked down on him. He would lose to no one. This desperate desire for power was born from a place of deep shame. He remembers the disappointment in the eyes of his father and their retainers. He was seen as weak, pitiful, utterly worthless, defeated by a commoner boy, no match for the princess. It was from this faint crack in his heart that the demon's temptation first began to seep in. That temptation manifested into a twisted reality. A voice from his past echoes, telling him he has no power whatsoever. He relives the moment a blonde princess declared him a demon, his human reasoning and emotions stolen and warped. With a cry, she unleashed a torrent of ice upon him. Her magic, however, was not enough. He endured the attack, his wounds already beginning to regenerate. The princess, once hailed as an equal to the first king in battle, could only stare in disbelief. He loomed over her, laughing at the sight of her groveling, and promised to take her head. But before he could act, an interruption. The commoner hero arrived. Salim turned to face him, recognizing the orphan brat with no manners. A sneer crossed his face as he spat out his hatred for the hero's righteous life. The ensuing battle was the culmination of his fall. This is what awaited those who gave in to demonic temptation. He was struck down by the hero, and his soul was fed to the demons again and again. Pulled from the depths of that memory, he understands now. His soul had been brimming with immense magical power, which was why the demons who devoured it grew so strong, ultimately becoming the cause of the kingdom's downfall. He realizes he wasn't strong enough to resist, but perhaps the barriers protecting mankind had already weakened, allowing the demons to slip through. He was simply the first to fall. The quest repeats in his mind. Reach Seeker level 30. If he can raise his level, perhaps he can walk a different path. He recalls the feeling, the desperate clawing for strength. He never wished to lose himself, let alone bring about the kingdom's ruin. But he wanted power. With that final, painful admission, a sharp breath is drawn. A new resolve settles in his eyes. He considered the path before him, a series of ethereal notifications materializing in the air. A welcome message, followed by the commencement of his main and daily quests. Reaching out, he touched the glowing text, wondering if this was truly the way to strengthen his heart and level up. The system responded, detailing the newly started daily quest. Complete a prayer and perform one good deed to earn experience points. He let out a sigh, contemplating the tasks. He decided to try praying, clasping his hands together, but initially, nothing seemed to happen. Just as doubt crept in, a notification confirmed the prayer was complete. He was surprised, realizing that he had never truly prayed with sincerity before and that the right mindset was likely the key. Seeing that his experience points remained unchanged, he understood he also needed to perform a good deed. The concept seemed vague, but he resolved to try donating to the church. As the carriage rattled along the road, he gazed out the window. The scenery was beautiful, painted with the colors of autumn leaves. The sight stirred an unexpected feeling within him. He mused that being moved by such a view was something an old man might do, not a boy of 14. But he couldn't help it. The memories of a much longer, tormented life were still fresh. This simple moment felt profound. The beautiful scenery, the gentle breeze, the rhythmic sway of the carriage, it was all so pleasant. He cherished this fleeting peace, a stark contrast to the decade-long eternity he'd spent with his soul being devoured by a demon. He touched his face, grappling with disbelief. At first, he'd suspected this was all a cruel illusion crafted by the demon, or perhaps a final flashback as his soul faded away. But the sensations were too vivid, too real to be a mere dream. His thoughts were interrupted by a familiar voice. It was Katia, his guard and swordsmanship tutor. He recalled her as a brilliant, pure, and fiercely skilled warrior. A part elf, her long lifespan meant she hadn't changed at all. Noticing his distant expression, she asked if something was troubling him. She was taken aback by his subdued demeanor. Her concern was evident as she asked what was wrong, questioning his sudden humility and offering to return to the castle if he felt unwell. He quickly insisted he was fine, telling her not to treat him as if he were sick. Internally, he remembered a painful truth. In his previous life, Katia had left, disgusted by his corrupted nature. He believed that if even she had abandoned him, his fall was inevitable. He apologized for causing her worry. His apology seemed to ease her concern, though a hint of confusion remained. She let out a soft sigh, her expression softening. "I see," she said quietly. "I beg your pardon." She had been worrying so much because she didn't trust him, a realization that made him regret snapping at her. He thanked her, now perfectly fine, and resolved to be more careful. He knew he needed to start by fixing how he communicated with others, recalling that even a strange board had warned him to avoid peculiar deeds. His mention of a board left her completely bewildered. She asked what he was talking about, and he, in turn, was startled that she couldn't see it. Sensing the need for discretion, she quietly urged her young master to look at his own finger, understanding that this phenomenon was visible only to him. He explained that it was a strange board, one that usually remained out of sight, but would appear whenever he focused his attention. It displayed his level and the experience points needed to advance. Finding its name inconvenient, he decided to call it the Seeker System. Having arrived at their destination, Salim made his donation. A cleric from the church expressed her effusive gratitude, marveling at the generosity of a whole gold coin from the young heir of Duke Bergman. He considered the donation, a gold coin, enough to cover a commoner's living expenses for a month, and felt certain it would clear his daily quest. But a notification from the Seeker System declared the opposite. He had wasted the people's tax money, resulting in a loss of 500 experience points and a drop in his level. The shock was immediate. The system, it seemed, judged donations to this church as a waste. His anger flared as he remembered the truth. This country's church was corrupt, and its inaction had been one of the primary reasons for the kingdom's eventual fall to the demons. To lose experience for donating to such a worthless organization was infuriating. His fury triggered another penalty. The system informed him that for losing control of his emotions, another 50 experience points had been deducted. He was stunned by its strictness, realizing that even thinking about his anger was costly. He clenched his fists, desperately trying to calm down while Katia watched, perplexed by his sudden distress. Struggling to regain his composure, he announced to Katia that they were finished there. He insisted they take a walk around town, admitting he needed a breather before he completely lost his temper. As they walked through the town square, a pleasant aroma caught his attention. He paused, sniffing the air, and wondered aloud if it was the smell of chocolate. His senses led them to a nearby shop, its window displaying rows upon rows of delectable-looking confections. He sighed, feeling utterly worn out by the system's demands. A powerful craving for sweets washed over him, but he hesitated, worrying if indulging himself would lead to yet another experience point penalty. Deciding he'd had enough, he cast the concern aside. He would deal with the consequences later. He pointed decisively and asked for one of everything. He presented a box to Katia, explaining it's a thank you for accompanying him. Flustered, she questions if she deserves it, but he insists, saying she's always looking out for him. As she accepts, he comments on how popular the shop has become. Her face lights up with pure joy, and she thanks him profusely. The seeker system immediately responds to this act. It announces that making Katia happy has earned him 10 experience points. Furthermore, with the completion of the One Good Deed a Day quest, both it and the prayer quest are now fulfilled, granting a reward of 500 experience points and a level increase. He stares in disbelief, stunned that such a small gesture resulted in a significant gain, bringing his level up to -51. His confusion hardens into suspicion. He cannot comprehend the system's logic, feeling it strange. Unfair judgments are less a divine decree and more a demonic trick. After everything that happened in his past life, he questions what could possibly be expected of him now. Whether the system is the work of a god or a demon, he decides it doesn't matter. The next morning, he resolves to begin completing the daily quests, regardless of his age. He greets his maid, Mari, and immediately begins to ponder what good deed he should perform for the day. He looks closely at Mari, the maid who has cared for him since his infancy, realizing just how young she must have been. For now, he concludes, his best course of action is to follow the system's rules and work on increasing his level. Putting his plan into action, he offers Mari the chocolate he purchased the day before. The maid gasps, completely taken aback by the sudden gift. She stammers her thanks, privately wondering about the reason for his unusual behavior. He waits, but the system doesn't react. This puzzles him. He recalls that giving to the corrupt church yielded a negative result, yet giving Katia a gift she hadn't asked for increased his experience. He begins to theorize that the outcome depends on giving something to a proper recipient. Having formed a new hypothesis, he decides his next attempt will be a donation to the city orphanage. He instructs Mari to arrange a visit for that afternoon, after his studies and training are complete. The maid, surprised by the destination, confirms the order. That afternoon, upon arriving at the orphanage, he observes the well-kept grounds and the happy children playing. It seems to be a properly run institution. He approaches the matron, offering a coin and instructing her to use the generous donation to give the children a good meal. The woman accepts gratefully, promising to make good use of it. His experiment was a resounding success. A notification from the Seeker system confirmed a gain of 100 EXP for the donation, and an additional 500 EXP for completing the daily quests of prayer and One Good Deed a Day. Clenching his fist in triumph, he realized the key. As long as his actions genuinely help someone, the system would reward him. He turned to the orphanage matron with a confident smile, now certain of his path forward. He pledged his continued support to ensure the children's happiness, and urged her to inform him of any needs they might have. The matron, overwhelmed with gratitude, thanked him profusely. Taking him at his word, she mentioned that some of the children were cold and could use winter blankets. He readily agreed, promising to have them delivered by the following day. Internally, he began to strategize, realizing that by supporting the other welfare facilities in his family's domain, he could consistently complete his daily quests. His simple plan, however, was immediately complicated. Back at his residence, his maid, Mari, announced the arrival of his swordsmanship tutor, while other staff presented documents for his approval. He felt the weight of his responsibilities crushing him. Between his studies, training, and managing the household in his parents' absence, he was completely overworked. He recalled his promise to the orphanage, but reasoned that a personal visit from the Lord's son so late would be an imposition. To avoid troubling them, he decided to have a servant deliver the blankets instead, confident it would still fulfill his daily quest. A short while later, a servant reported the messenger's return, presenting a letter of thanks from the orphanage. Yet, Salim received no notification from the system. He stared at the letter in confusion, questioning if a good deed only counted if he performed it himself, rather than simply ordering it done. The implications of this discovery settled in his mind. If personal action was the key to a good deed, he wondered if the inverse was also true. A dark thought crossed his mind. Could he then commit evil by proxy without any personal involvement? To test this new theory, he called Mari over. With a calm but firm expression, he gave her a strange order to break a branch from a nearby plant. Startled, the maid hesitated for a moment before reluctantly agreeing to follow his command. The system's response was immediate and punishing. A notification declared a 10 EXP loss for intentionally harming a plant. He was stunned. The system held him responsible even for acts carried out by others. As he began to ponder potential loopholes, a second, more severe penalty struck, a 100 EXP deduction simply for considering how to cheat the system. He could only stare in disbelief as his experience points plummeted. Shaken by the revelation, he dismissed Mari, telling her he was finished. The maid, who had been enjoying the cozy warmth of the room, apologized and quickly took her leave. He listened as Mari, with a cheerful laugh, commented on the chill in the servants' waiting room. She noted that while there should be a heating magic tool, only a young master like him could make a room so thoroughly comfortable. She explained that unlike the heater in his room, which was powered by his vast mana, the one in the waiting room ran on the servant's own limited supply, making it far less effective as it radiated a gentle warmth. He processed this, understanding that the mana servants could spare for heating was minuscule compared to a noble's. Mari elaborated that while she met the qualifications for a maid, they had to prioritize mana for work. In the main mansion, where smoke and soot were forbidden, even the break rooms relied on these weak magical devices. A realization struck him. He had never considered the servants' practical limitations. He decided to inspect the break room's heater himself. Putting his decision into action, he strode toward the servants' quarters. Mari and another maid watched in shock as he opened the door, calling out his title in surprise. He found the break room, where the maids questioned his presence during their rest time. He confirmed his suspicion. The heating tool was receiving very little mana, barely functioning. Closing his eyes, he channeled his own power into it, flooding the device and asking if the room was now more comfortable. His action was immediately recognized. A notice appeared before him, confirming he had shown kindness, gained 100 EXP, and completed 2 daily quests for a reward of 500 EXP, causing him to level up. As the maids reveled in the sudden warmth, he quietly celebrated his success. He pondered the meaning of kindness. He reasoned that if he continued to pour magic into the heating system every day, it would not only make others happy, but would also likely count toward quest completion. His thoughts continued, acknowledging that the system was likely not so generous. Despite this, he resolved that even if he didn't receive EXP for it, he would warm the room for them every night regardless. This selfless resolution was instantly rewarded. Another system notice granted him 300 EXP for having a selfless heart. He was stunned, realizing that just as he could lose points for a negative thought, he could gain them for a positive one. The system's power to restrict even his thoughts, he concluded, was its most difficult and painful aspect. His troubled expression did not go unnoticed. Mari asked what was wrong, observing that he had seemed like a different person all morning. He internally acknowledged the truth in her words before turning to her with a serious question. If she had to perform a good deed a day, what would she do? He reflects on his past self. Now 14 years old in the late autumn, with the academy entrance test looming next year, he was constantly buried in his studies. According to his memories of that time, the stress would cause him to lash out, yelling at the servants whenever something displeased him. His current resolve, however, earns praise from Mari, who finds his effort to mature before heading to the royal capital admirable. Internally, Salim pleads with the system not to penalize him for his past actions, acknowledging that yelling isn't right. When he asks for her thoughts on good deeds, Mari muses that if it were her, she would pick up trash around town. Taking this suggestion with surprising enthusiasm, Salim declares he'll try it too, which horrifies Mari. She quickly protests that a young master can't do such a thing, explaining that she meant it as a task for herself. The social implications of her idea dawn on him. He realizes with dread that if anyone discovered the heir of a ducal house performing such a menial task, he would surely be kicked out of the family. The simple daily quest has become a complex problem of social class. This complication leads his thoughts down a darker path. Perhaps running away from home would be easier, allowing him to focus solely on leveling up. He recalls the future he is trying to prevent, a demon invasion that annihilates not just the ducal house, but the entire kingdom. He remembers the frustrating power of the commoner hero who defeated him, and how their limited forces were no match for the ever-growing swarm of demons that eventually erased the kingdom from the map. He considers that if he were to live alone in hiding, he could simply avoid the demon's temptations and his own transformation. But he knows this is a flawed plan. His personal escape would not stop the demon invasion he remembers is coming. An invasion that'll be aided by the church's pervasive corruption. Abandoning the idea of flight, he resolves to find a way to prevent the kingdom's fall while maintaining his influential position. He turns back to Mari, rejecting monster hunting as it would cost him points, and dismissing donations as something he's already done. He asks her again, more directly, for an idea for a good deed he could perform daily. His intensity frightens Mari, who can't think of anything. A system alert flashes, 50 experience points deducted for frightening a woman. Stunned, Salim immediately apologizes, telling her not to worry. His genuine apology moves Mari to tears, as she marvels at how kind her young master has become. Salim feels a twinge of guilt, realizing how terrible he must have been for such a small gesture to affect her so deeply. Unable to find a suitable daily deed, Salim has been seeking advice elsewhere to prepare mentally for the academy. He discusses the matter with an older tutor who understands his situation. He proposes a new idea, creating magical tools for the impoverished who have low magic power. The tutor explains that her field, enchantment magic, involves crafting such tools, but that development for the poor is neglected due to low profits. However, she agrees it is precisely where research should focus, a declaration that stuns two onlookers. He listens as his tutor suggests that designing tools from the perspective of others would be excellent training. The boy, however, seems overwhelmed by the thought of inventing something daily, a reaction his tutor finds disappointing. Despite his initial hesitation, he agrees that it sounds like an interesting study and promises to give it some thought, setting his quill to paper. His tutor observes him, contemplating his next move. A sudden idea strikes him. He turns his attention to a nearby maid, asking her about the magical tools used for heating. She explains that in the servants' quarters, they rely on simple firewood, as only commoners with sufficient magical ability are employed on the castle staff. In response to this need, he presents a newly devised magic circle. He explains that he has repurposed a portion of a magical heating tool's formula to improve firewood efficiency. By placing the circle beneath a fireplace, it will absorb ambient mana, causing the wood to burn for nearly twice as long without consuming any magical power from a user. His tutor is deeply impressed, remarking on his remarkable talent. She muses that if he were to specialize in enchantment magic, he could improve countless lives. The thought gives the young master pause. He knows that nobles with immense magic power, like himself, are expected to prioritize fighting magical beasts. That is their duty. He reflects on the rigid expectations placed upon him. The worth of a duke's son is measured by his combat prowess, his ability to eliminate monsters and secure land for humanity. With this in mind, he dismisses the idea of becoming a specialist in tool development, resigning enchantment magic to the status of a mere hobby. He believes he must be strong. His tutor, however, remains captivated by his work, marveling at the beautifully efficient formula he created in a single lesson. Despite her praise, the boy privately laments his poor compatibility with the seeker system. Nevertheless, having earned his teacher's stamp of approval, he resolves to send the blueprint to a craftsman. As he makes his decision, a notification from the system materializes before him. His experience points have suddenly surged, leaving him utterly stunned by the unexpected jump. The shock gives way to renewed determination. He acknowledges that the road ahead is difficult, but he vows to persevere. By following the seeker system's guidance, completing quests, and leveling up, he will overcome the demonic temptations and avert the tragic future he remembers, forging a path toward a happy ending. A young boy, Salim Bergman, awakens in his bed, a single tear tracing a path down his cheek. He realizes with a heavy heart that 6 days have passed, confirming that he has truly returned to the past. His mind flashes back to the future he remembers. Though he is only 14 now, his memories are of a life that ended at 17, when he had become a demon and was slain by the hero. After that death, his body vanished and his soul was endlessly devoured by demons. He was forced to watch as his kingdom fell to ruin over a decade. Every agonizing detail burned into his mind, even though his very soul should have been shattered. This whole baffling situation, he concludes, must be related to the mysterious seeker system that has manifested before him. It is a system that demands he strengthen his heart and resist the temptations of demons, though he does not yet fully grasp its workings. To avoid the horrible future he knows, he resolves to follow the system's guidance. He recalls his attempts at the daily quests. Donating to the church and giving a gift to a maid were both ineffective. However, his donations to the local orphanage yielded a positive reaction, giving him a clear path to follow. And so, for several days, he diligently continued donating to the orphanage, with the elven swordswoman Katia standing watch nearby. He soon learned that the system did not reward excessive generosity. Once the orphanage had enough operational funds, further gold donations stopped being counted. He discovered, however, that donating useful magical tools he had developed himself was still effective. His routine of aid is interrupted when Katia approaches him with a document. She formally informs Salim Sama that his practical training is to begin today with a monster-slaying expedition, and that she will accompany him as a supervisor. He accepts, stepping out into a wide courtyard where a group of armed individuals are assembled. As Katia stands beside him, he scans the group, surmising that his task will be to find villagers in trouble. As he contemplates his mission, the assembled party turns to him in unison, their faces bright with anticipation as they shout a cheerful, "Good morning, Salim Sama." He greets his companions with a good morning, encouraging them to do their best in the day's practical training. He reminds them that they must all train hard so they can pass next year's academy entrance exam together. As he speaks, one of the young nobles, Gilbert, complains to his bespectacled friend, Valerie. He questions why their targets are only goblins, demanding a more serious challenge. Valerie sighs, explaining that this expedition isn't just about defeating monsters. For nobles their age, the entire process of participating and returning successfully is part of the training. He warns Gilbert that if he doesn't take this seriously, he'll regret it, as the Academy's entrance exam is expected to be extremely competitive next year. Valerie points out that many nobles are adjusting their enrollment to coincide with the princess's year. Gilbert retorts that he already knows this, proudly declaring it an honor to be in the same year as Salim Sama. Salim confirms this internally. The year he plans to enroll is indeed the same year the crown princess will attend. He reflects on the Academy's flexible age requirement, which allows so many to align their entry with the princess, a royal whose combat prowess is said to rival that of the first king. The conversation underscores the fierce competition ahead. They must strive for excellence in both academics and martial arts. Valerie Meldars, despite his family standing, is anxious about the martial arts exam, while Gilbert Benson, a viscount's son, worries about the written portion. As the wagon rattles along, Salim observes his companions, knowing from his future memories that they are all potential candidates for his inner circle. He recalls his past life's failure. After entering the academy, he was outclassed in combat by a commoner hailed as a hero and overshadowed in leadership by the daughter of a marquis. He remembers how his retainers showed respect on the surface, but he could sense their exasperated sighs behind his back. Sensing this alienation, he began lashing out, and slowly, a rift formed between him and those who once stood by his side. The rattling of the wagon brings him back to the present. He resolves that one of the goals of this expedition is to build camaraderie with those who will one day fight beside him. He must follow the system's guidance and play this smart. His thoughts are interrupted by Gilbert's complaint. Kobolds again? Valerie chides him, telling him to quit whining. He explains that it's not unusual for weak monsters to appear in areas with few people. In human territory, mana is inhabited by humans, but in uninhabited lands saturated with mana, it gives rise to monsters instead, demonstrating the fierce territorial struggle. Gilbert remains unimpressed, muttering that kobolds are barely a warm-up for Salim. Suddenly, the wagon stops. 3 kobolds block their path. Salim calmly tells Gilbert he'll be fine and orders him to handle them, stating it's better for everyone to gain combat experience. A panicked Gilbert questions the decision, but the command has been given. He mused on the strange rules of the system guiding him. When he ordered someone else to defeat monsters, it didn't seem to react. This was different from the time he gave an unnecessary order to break plant branches, which resulted in a point deduction. It seemed Gilbert's own lack of doubt in fighting monsters meant Salim's experience gain was unaffected. His thoughts continued, sharp and focused. He still didn't fully grasp how the system made its evaluations. Based on a hunch, he felt it was best to minimize any potential losses. Taking a life himself, he suspected, might be registered as a demerit, something he wished to avoid as much as possible. Just then, Gilbert's voice cut through his thoughts, complaining that even kobolds were a pain to deal with. Salim, seemingly ignoring the complaint, addressed the rest of his retainers. He declared that for the next encounter, the 6 of them, everyone except himself and Gilbert, would handle it. The order was met with a collective gasp of surprise. As they moved to their next encounter, a new threat emerged from the rattling bushes: horned wolves. Valerie noted that they were tougher than kobolds, but was confident the group could handle them. Salim observed his young retainers, none of whom had even entered the academy yet. He then projected his voice, imbued with a calming power. "Stay calm and fight," he commanded. "I'm watching over you." His followers stared in awe. Bolstered by his words, the retainers charged into battle. The forest clearing filled with the clang of steel and the snarls of beasts as the 6 young warriors engaged the pack of horned wolves in a chaotic melee. After the swift battle, Gilbert approached him, a wide grin on his face. "You're so kind, Salim-sama," he exclaimed, praising the support Salim had provided. He contrasted it with his own lack of assistance in the previous fight. Salim noted internally that using support magic to help others defeat monsters didn't seem to trigger any reaction from the system, just as he'd expected. He looked upon his victorious retainers, now gathered around him. With the initial test complete, he decided on his next course of action. It was time to see what would happen if he engaged in combat directly. Their practical training soon brought them to a nearby village. At the entrance, they were greeted by an elderly woman who introduced herself as the village chief. She expressed her deep gratitude that Lord Salim had come all this way himself. He formally accepted her welcome, stating that he would be in her care during their stay. Inside, the village chief began her report. She informed Salim of recent goblin sightings and the discovery of their settlement west of the village. The threat was significant. The group was led by a hobgoblin, and several of them were capable of using magic. She gestured to a man in full plate armor, explaining that he was the only knight stationed there. While he and the villagers could normally handle local monsters, this new threat was too great, leaving them no choice but to ask for reinforcements. The knight beside her confirmed that requesting reinforcements was the right decision, admitting he wouldn't have been enough alone. The chief added that the process was made much easier thanks to their lord, Salim's father. Hearing his father praised, Salim had a quiet realization. The ducal territory's administration was functioning properly. A swell of pride filled his chest. He considers his daily quest while Gilbert enthusiastically eats some sweets. Salim offers him one, thanking him for the greeting, but Valerie interjects, telling Gilbert not to spoil his appetite for dinner. Gilbert retorts, questioning if Valerie is underestimating his capacity to eat. His attention then turns to the task at hand, confirming that the magical stove is indeed broken. As 2 village women watch, he inspects the stove's inner workings, noting the worn and faded runes on its enchantment plates. He finds enjoyment in the challenge of figuring out the repair and, with a quick adjustment, announces that it should be working again. The moment the repair is complete, a notification appears in his vision. He has completed his daily quests, leveled up to 45, and gained experience for fixing the magical tool. He exclaims in satisfaction. The village chief expresses her astonishment, admitting she was confused why the young lord himself had so eagerly offered to help. He smiles, explaining that there is no need for thanks. He is simply very interested in enchantment magic and was happy to see such fine craftsmanship. His words moved the women to tears, and they promised to pour their souls into preparing dinner as a show of their deep gratitude. With the magical tool repairs complete and his daily quest cleared, he reflects that asking the village chief for more tasks was the correct decision. His work is not yet done. He walks along the village's perimeter, observing the damaged monster defenses. He notes they are basic earth and magic barriers that the villagers could likely repair over time, but decides he might as well fix them himself while he is there. In a flash of light, he unleashes his magic, restoring the village's defense barrier in an instant. His system awards him another 100 experience point for the deed. He pauses, reflecting on his past actions. It seems strange to him now that he once had to desperately search the castle for good deeds. He realizes that perhaps helping people with their daily lives is the true meaning of doing good. The village chief approaches, surprised to see him up, so early and amazed that he has already fixed the wall. He turns to her and explains that he wanted to finish before the hunt, stating that performing a few repairs is simply the duty of a noble lord charged with protecting his people. He stands awkwardly as the village chief wishes him well, expressing her pride in being one of his people. As she prays for his success on the monster hunt, he internally dismisses the sentiment, his thoughts focused solely on the experience points he stands to gain from the goblins. Upon arriving at their destination, he and his party survey the goblin encampment. He quickly assesses the enemy force: a large hobgoblin leader, 2 goblin mages, and about 30 others. He devises a strategy on the spot, ordering the weaker candidates to handle the goblins on the fringes. He then directs Gilbert to charge into the thickest part of the horde while the rest of the group prevents any from escaping. He declares that he will take care of the boss himself, and Valerie acknowledges the command. With the plan set, he activates a body boost spell and dashes directly toward the hobgoblin. When a goblin archer takes aim from a cliff, he instantly casts Freeze to neutralize the threat, then follows up with an ice bullet to eliminate another. A notification appears, confirming the kill, but also informing him of a 100-point deduction from his experience gain, much to his irritation. Gritting his teeth against the frustration of the point penalty, he carves a path through the lesser goblins, his eyes set firmly on his primary target. His sudden assault catches the 2 goblin mages by surprise as they hastily erect a barrier. He scoffs, declaring it's time for payback, and shatters their defense with a single ice bullet, eliminating both spellcasters. 2 more notifications appear, each confirming a kill and another 100-point deduction. He presses the attack, spotting a goblin with its back exposed. He fires another ice bullet, felling it instantly. This time, however, the system announces a staggering 1,000-point reduction in experience. The massive penalty brings him to a halt. He stares in shock, questioning the 1,000-point loss. From nearby, Valerie observes that the in-combat status seems to have vanished, making the kill count as a simple monster takedown. Salim realizes that, just moments before, each kill was only a 100-point penalty, and wonders if he accidentally finished off monsters that were trying to flee. The realization dawns on him. To confirm his new theory, he casts Freeze on another approaching goblin, immobilizing it. With this new understanding, he changes tactics. He turns to his comrades, praising their efforts so far, and then casts a wide-range freeze spell to incapacitate a group of goblins for them. Seeing the helpless targets, Gilbert bellows for the monsters not to run away. His strategic shift earns immediate reactions. Valerie rallies the others, shouting that Salim has left them prey and that they shouldn't let him down. Gilbert cheers, calling him an exemplary commander. Katia, however, offers a more critical assessment to another party member, noting that while Salim's spellcasting speed is a remarkable talent that far surpasses his swordsmanship, he must make better use of the sword skill she has been teaching him. Salim overhears, quietly pondering her words. He reflects on his own power, acknowledging that with his magic, he could freeze the entire horde of monsters in an instant. Even in his memories of the future, he feels he surpassed the hero in casting speed and the sheer volume of spells. However, he consciously chose to use his sword this time, as annihilating them with magic would cause a massive deduction in experience points. Hadia observes him, correctly surmising that he is deliberately not fighting alone and is instead focusing on training his subordinates. Impressed by his foresight, she listens as he confirms her assessment. From now on, he will have them do the fighting while he watches and provides support from the rear. Putting his new strategy into practice, he gestures forward with a flourish of magic, shouting encouragement to his party. He urges them on, challenging them to show him they can take the goblins down. After the battle, his party gathers before him. They report that their movements have improved since before and pledge to give their all to support him. He hopes they will continue to support him in the royal capital the following year. Gilbert and the others are flushed with excitement, despite the fact that Salim barely moved and left all the work to them. Gilbert wonders to himself if they are secretly a group of battle junkies. Later, speaking with the village chief, Salim explains a recent discovery. It was revealed that slaying living beings, even harmful monsters, goes against the philosophy of the Seeker and results in a deduction of experience points. As long as he continues leveling up as a Seeker, he can no longer take pride in his martial strength alone. He resigns himself to this fact, concluding that the system's judgment of good and evil is based on its own values, and they have no choice but to accept it. He decides it's better to see it that way, so he doesn't get too frustrated. This new understanding highlights the importance of daily life in the village. It seems that to fulfill the goal of one good deed a day, one must become involved in the lives of the people. Back at his family's estate, Mari the maid informs him that his father has returned home. Salim is taken aback. During this pre-enrollment period, his schedule is packed with study plans, leaving him no time. Mari simply responds with a cheerful nice. He realizes that his father, Duke Bergman, is rarely ever at the castle due to inspections and expeditions. If he's going to talk to him, he must do it now. This thought is met with his father's booming voice, questioning why Salim wants to shorten his private tutoring time. His father listened as Salim defiantly explained his desire for time to think for himself, rather than blindly following his tutors. The boy dismissed their lessons as foolish and only useful for showing off. The Duke's response was cold and sharp, telling the insolent child to know his place and do as he was told, a rebuke that left Salim stunned. In response to this defiance, his father retaliated not with words, but with magic. A fireball materialized and shot toward Salim. Panicked at the thought of the priceless furniture being destroyed, the boy couldn't bear to see such a masterpiece ruined. He reacted instantly, casting an ice wall barrier to protect the room. The Duke watched impressed. He recognized the Bergman barrier, a composite magic developed by their family over generations. To activate it so swiftly was a feat Salim shouldn't have mastered at 14. He understood then that this skill was the fruit of memories from desperate training that, for Salim, had already happened. Salim, meanwhile, pleaded with his father to take their fight outside, exclaiming that the furniture was considered more precious than human lives. The Duke seemed to ignore him, remarking that his son wasn't all talk after all. As he prepared to strike again, a system notification flashed through Salim's mind. His flippant thought had cost him 100 experience points. He inwardly cursed, telling himself it was just a turn of phrase. But the system was unforgiving. Another notification appeared, deducting 50 more experience points for his poor attitude. The boy forced himself to calm down, wiping sweat from his brow. He resolved to focus on minimizing damage to the furniture, thinking that his father was completely out of control. Across the room, the Duke, his sword now wreathed in flames, challenged him to cast the Bergman barrier again. The sight of his father triggered a stark memory. In the future, he remembered, it wasn't this reckless man who succumbed to a demon's temptation and became a demon lord. It was Salim himself. His father had died a hero, fighting to protect his people from the very demon his son had become. Returning to the present, Salim let out a heavy sigh. Humans were hard to figure out. With that thought, he once again summoned the ice wall barrier just as his father lunged forward. The effort was immense. Salim felt a wave of exhaustion, realizing that even with his future knowledge, his 14-year-old body lacked the mana to maintain the advanced spell for long. His father observed this struggle, admitting to himself that the boy had clearly thought the entire confrontation through. His internal assessment gave way to a booming laugh. The Duke praised Salim for neatly protecting the nearby documents. He remarked that Salim had his mother Erica's looks and personality, and that the only thing he inherited from his father was his voice. With that, the test was over, and he turned to leave. He lets out a sigh of relief, a small, knowing smile on his face. He muses that it's a good thing his father is the type who could be swayed by a show of force. With that confrontation over, he feels he has finally secured some time to level up. He resolves that starting tomorrow, he will head into town and try interacting with people, thankful that his strict mother is currently away. This marks a step forward. In a bustling city street, Salim Bergman walks with a confident stride, reveling in his secret excursion. He believes his disguise as a commoner, with no escorts and plain clothes, is perfect for blending in. He congratulates himself on the success of his stealth mission, recalling how he instructed Maid Mari not to let anyone into his room, ensuring no one would notice he had slipped out. As he reflects, a translucent screen materializes before him, displaying a daily quest from the system: perform one good deed. He knows that as the heir to a duke, his actions are restricted, but to complete the quest, he must interact with the townspeople. This is all part of his desperate plan. He remembers his past life, where at 17 he succumbed to a demon's temptation, became a demon lord, and was ultimately destroyed by the hero. After spending a decade as a disembodied soul watching his kingdom crumble, he inexplicably returned to his 14-year-old body. It was then that the mysterious system appeared, commanding him to raise his seeker level by avoiding evil and strengthening his heart. He is determined to avoid that horrific future at all costs. With this resolve, he understands that his only path forward is to follow the system's guidance and level up. He spots an elderly woman struggling with a heavy water bucket and sees his opportunity. Approaching her, he offers to carry the heavy load, but his sudden appearance only startles the woman, who asks who he is. His offer accepted, he carries the bucket. A notification confirms the completion of his daily quest, granting him a substantial amount of experience points. He realizes that interacting with commoners is indeed the key. The woman, however, sizes him up and, seeing that he is free, suggests he might as well clean her house. The woman doesn't wait for an answer, handing him a duster. When she asks what it is, she quickly realizes from his blank expression that he genuinely doesn't know. She mutters to herself, wondering what kind of sheltered life he must have led. He takes the unfamiliar object and examines it closely. After a moment of study, he deduces that the cloth part is meant for gently dusting things off. With his newfound and incorrect understanding, he attacks the dust with vigorous swings, immediately filling the room with thick, choking clouds. The woman coughs, exasperated, and shouts that she told him to be gentle. She points out the dust built up in the high places he can't reach. Seeing the problem, he announces his intention to borrow a nearby desk. But instead of using the desk to gain height, he begins meticulously cleaning the surface of the desk itself with the duster. The woman watches in utter bewilderment, wondering what on earth he is doing. He addresses the elderly woman informally, asking for a spare container. She sighs, clearly irritated, and corrects him, stating that her name is Amanda and he should not address her so casually. Despite her annoyance, she hands him a small pot. With a flourish, he reveals his magically enhanced cleaning tool, which has gathered all the dust from the room into a neat pile on a cloth, announcing its completion. Amanda watches, looking thoroughly unimpressed by the display. The dust neatly deposits itself into the container. Amanda is suddenly astonished, asking if he is some kind of magic tool craftsman. He casually dismisses it as a hobby, but she is convinced of his skill and insists that he must come with her. She bursts into a nearby shop, calling out for a man named Johann. An older gentleman with a mustache greets Granny Amanda warmly, and then curiously asks about the handsome young man she has brought along. Without preamble, Amanda points to a large, old, and rusty metal box, demanding that Salim fix it. He stares at the dilapidated device, bewildered by the sudden command. He inspects the machine, admitting he knows little of its internal parts, but quickly identifies the problem. The magical inscription has simply faded. He determines that by gathering, vibrating, and amplifying mana, he should be able to restore it. The device comes back to life. Amanda is overjoyed, shouting that it's fixed. Johann thanks him profusely, explaining its age and their inability to afford a replacement. A notification appears before Salim. He has repaired a magical tool, gained 100 EXP, and leveled up. Her excitement boiling over, Amanda declares that this calls for a celebration. She decides they will throw a karaoke party, something they haven't done in ages, and immediately resolves to call neighbors. Salim is utterly confused by the word karaoke as the shop fills with other elderly citizens, all eager for the party. Another system notification informs him that by restoring the elder's joy, he has gained an additional 500 EXP. He can only stare in bewilderment at the commotion, musing on the strange ways commoners entertain themselves. Later, another woman approaches Amanda's home, asking if something is wrong. Amanda looks toward Salim and questions him directly. She notes this is the third day he has appeared and asks if he is just a bored rich man with a strange hobby. He denies it, stating plainly that he is trying to level up. He tried to explain his goal, to perform one good deed a day. Amanda, still confused by his talk of leveling up, listened with a skeptical expression. She warned him that the day's task might be too much for a pampered young master, but still asked what he had in mind. Instead of answering him directly, Amanda led him to a registration table where another woman was working. The woman questioned Amanda's intentions for bringing such a handsome boy along. With a firm voice, Amanda declared that Salim will be taking her place in the day's activity and instructed the woman to register him. Her answer was a bellowed declaration, gutter cleaning. He considered the task. It was a community cleanup day, a difficult obligation for someone like Amanda who lived alone. He recognized it as a perfect opportunity, an action that would genuinely help the townsfolk and fulfill his daily quest. With renewed determination, he resolved to do the job well. Deciding to finish the task efficiently, he invoked his earth magic. A powerful clay wave erupted from the ground, instantly pulling all the sludge and filth from the gutters in one massive, swirling motion, leaving the onlookers stunned. In a single moment, the job was done. Holding the enormous sphere of collected waste aloft with his magic, he turned to the registration woman and asked where to dispose of it. Startled, she could only point toward a nearby vacant lot. With a simple acknowledgement, he moved the waste away. A notification confirmed his success. He had gained 100 EXP for cleaning the town, and an additional 500 EXP for completing his daily quest, bringing his total to 680 out of 1,000 for his current level. He returned to Amanda, presenting her with the participation prize. The old woman looked at him, astonished, noting that his clothes were completely spotless. He explained that he had wrapped a thin barrier around his body to avoid getting dirty, a necessary precaution to keep his activities secret from his family. She sighed, then offered him a cookie from the prize bag, insisting he had earned it. He flatly refused the gesture, stating that he wasn't starving and, with his business concluded, it was time for him to leave. His dismissive attitude finally broke her patience. Crushing the cookie in her fist, she erupted in anger, shouting at the ungrateful brat. Her sudden fury left him completely taken aback. He stood bewildered by the old woman's sudden fury. Holding the cookie she'd offered, he realized he simply didn't understand how to complete one good deed a day. It was clear he needed to learn the manners of commoners and should just follow her instructions. Amanda, meanwhile, was incensed, demanding to know why he couldn't at least smile and try a simple gift. She continued her lecture, explaining that when someone does something for you, you simply accept it and say thank you. That's how it works. Taking her words to heart, he hesitantly bit into the cookie. To his surprise, it was actually quite good. He chewed thoughtfully, a new concept forming in his mind. So, saying thank you was important. He paused, wondering if this was some kind of trick, a secret to getting along with commoners. This realization cast his recent experiences in a new light. He had helped Amanda with her gutter cleaning, but she had never thanked him, only yelled at him to go home. Yet he also recalled helping other villagers with leaky roofs and various problems, steadily gaining experience and leveling up. He now understood. Amanda was a capable woman who had built strong relationships within her community. As the new year began, Salim Bergman, now 15 years old, had become the town's de facto handyman. Cleaning was now a simple task. Upon finishing his work at Amanda's house, a series of notifications appeared before him. He had gained experience, completed his daily good deed, and, most astonishingly, leveled up from -1 all the way to level 2. He let out a triumphant shout, overjoyed to finally be out of the negative levels. His celebration was promptly cut short by Amanda's gruff voice from nearby, telling him he was being too loud. Despite her tone, she offered him an apple, suggesting they celebrate his good fortune. He accepted with a simple thank you. Amanda remarked that for someone who always seemed to have his head in the clouds, he was finally present. He took a bite, a blissful expression spreading across his face. It felt like heaven. As he ate, his mind analyzed the level up. He had been tracking his EXP, but this was unexpected. He jumped from -1 to 2, skipping level 1 entirely. It seemed the leveling threshold had changed. He concluded that while it was easy now, it would surely become more difficult later on. He then noticed an unread message in his system menu. He had acquired a new skill, healing for small cuts and abrasions. He considered testing it on himself, but knew his own powerful magic would heal such a minor wound instantly. Wondering if this skill was different, he asked Amanda if she knew anyone with a small injury he could treat. She scoffed, reminding him that skilled healers were rare, but then paused, reconsidering. With him, she mused, anything seemed possible. Before he could say more, Amanda acted. With a swift, deliberate motion, she drew a small knife across her own palm, creating a shallow cut. His eyes widened in shock as she presented the bleeding scratch. Look, she said calmly, just a small one. He could only stammer, horrified that he had caused her to actually injure herself. He stares at the bleeding hand, perplexed. According to the system, he has the ability to heal, but unlike his regular magic where he can instinctively feel how to move the mana, this new skill feels alien. Amanda urges him to hurry, but he has no idea how to even begin. A translucent screen materializes before his eyes, displaying a simple query. A treatable wound has been detected. Would you like to heal it? Yes/no. The realization dawns on him. The system handles the skill automatically. As he mentally accepts, the gash on Amanda's hand seals itself shut in an instant. She observes calmly that it worked. He notes, however, that his experience points haven't increased at all. He surmises that healing wounds inflicted on purpose must not count. Amanda suggests a solution, proposing they find someone with natural injuries. She knows just the place, mentioning that the children who play in the nearby vacant lot are always covered in scrapes. As they walk, he calls up his status screen. It reads, Salim Bergman, male, 15 years old. Seeker, level 2. EXP to next level, 90/300. He also sees new entries for MP and healing skill proficiency. The system's explanations are always vague, so he makes a mental note to investigate what the numbers mean. Just then, Amanda announces their arrival. Their path leads them to a noisy group of children. One of them spots Amanda with Salim and playfully teases her about finding a handsome young man. This earns a sharp rebuke from a nearby older man, who bellows at the child not to say such foolish things. His attention, however, is drawn to a small boy who had tripped and scraped his knee. Immediately, the system prompt appears again, detecting another treatable wound. Salim approaches the child and asks to take a look, causing the other children to stare, one whispering that he's creepy. He accepts the prompt, and the boy's wound vanishes. The child looks down, astonished that it no longer hurts. A system message confirms the result. 100 experience points have been added. The amazed boy looks up at Salim, calling him a handsome big brother and asking for his name. The boy's innocent question makes Salim realize that in the 2 months he has spent with Amanda, she has never once asked his name. Amanda explains that it's proper etiquette to introduce oneself first before asking for another's name, something he never did. The child chimes in, pointing out that being nameless is inconvenient and that he should pick a fake name. A sudden idea strikes him. His eyes light up with inspiration as he points to himself and declares with newfound confidence, "It's Gonbi." His new identity declared, Gonbi turns to the other children, telling anyone with injuries to show him. They flock to him eagerly. With each child he heals, a notification appears, adding 100 EXP. His level skyrockets from 2 to 4 in moments. As he works, Amanda watches for a moment before deciding it's time for her to head home. His efforts had paid off. A glance at his status revealed he was now Salim Bergman, a 15-year-old seeker at level 4. His magical power, or MP, stood at 920 out of a maximum of 7,691, and his healing skill proficiency had reached an impressive 97. Lying in bed, he finally had a moment to reflect. He now understood that MP was simply a numerical value for his magical power. The use of his skills was automated by the system, consuming this power just as any other magic would. It was through treating the children that he had finally unlocked the ability to use these skills and grasp their true meaning. But this new understanding raised further questions. He pondered if the MP value represented his maximum magical potential. Without any frame of reference, he had no way of knowing whether his current capacity was considered large or small. His thoughts then turned to the practical application of his power. He considered the efficiency of his magic, While healing his own minor wounds consumed a negligible amount of power, the special skill of healing others was incredibly inefficient. He recalled how quickly his MP was drained just by treating the light injuries of 10 people. A startling thought surfaced. If healing such minor wounds on a larger scale could consume half his maximum MP, then the skill was fundamentally impractical for any serious use. The sudden realization made him jolt in bed before exhaustion finally claimed him, and he drifted off to sleep. Yet, even as he succumbed to sleep, his mind raced with possibilities. He considered the worst-case scenario, but quickly resolved to find the answer on his own. A new theory formed. Perhaps the healing skill proficiency stat was the key. If he could raise it, maybe the magic's efficiency would improve as well. With a final moment of clarity, he understood his path forward. The real test would begin tomorrow. Salim Bergman, known to the local children as Ganbi, returned to check on them, asking if anyone was hurt. The children cheerfully informed him that he had already healed everyone the day before. His status as a level 5 seeker with high proficiency in healing was a testament to his recent efforts. He was taken aback, admitting he had come to test his skills. Seeing his troubled expression, the children questioned if he was simply trying to be nice by looking for people to heal. One of them then suggested he check out the other hangout spots in the area. His confusion prompted the children to explain that there were different territories among the commoner kids. While they couldn't enter another group's turf, they noted that Ganbi could go anywhere he pleased. The revelation of such social structures surprised him. As he continued his work among them, each act of healing brought a tangible reward, granting him experience points and pushing him further along his path. Later that evening, back in his room, he reflected on his progress. Having healed 10 children that day, he noticed his mana consumption becoming more efficient as his proficiency grew. He resolved to focus on this path, hoping to unlock even more useful healing skills. This routine continued for several days. As he made his rounds, steadily approaching level 10, he was suddenly confronted by a hooded figure who demanded to know if he was the one healing people in the area. The figures were from the church. The children muttered that the church only ever healed the wealthy. The lead woman declared that healing was a sacred art belonging to the church, and since he was not a member, he was encroaching. She extended an invitation for him to join them, offering a special baptism and a proper place within their ranks. His response was immediate and absolute. I refuse. Internally, he scoffed at the idea of joining an organization that would deduct experience points for simple donation. The church women were aghast at his disrespect, questioning if he understood the authority he was defying. He could not reveal his true identity as the eldest son of a ducal house while in disguise. Instead, with his eyes glowing, he raised a hand and manifested a complex magical seal, issuing a single, powerful command. Begone. The sudden surge of power stunned the women. A chill filled the air as they felt the incredible magical force emanating from him. One stammered that this was perhaps not the right place for a confrontation, their bravado completely shattered. After his display of power, Salim looks on as the children he healed erupt in cheers. One exclaims how awesome it was, another how good it felt. Relieved, Salim catches his breath, realizing he had resorted to magic and hoping he hadn't frightened them. The following day, he is once again surrounded by the children, a sense of ease settling over him. His calm is shattered when several figures in dark robes corner him in an alley. One of them speaks, stating they're church agents, and that he is to come with them quietly. Salim immediately understands the situation. He notes their choice of a back alley, away from prying eyes, and their all-black attire. It's clear they're trying to hide their identities, which tells him everything he needs to know. He decides that if they find out who he is, he must ensure they won't spread the word. With a swift motion, he casts a spell, shouting Ice Wall Barrier. The agents are taken aback. Salim then confronts them, questioning if they can take responsibility should anything happen to him, a member of the Bergman family. The agents retreat, one recognizing the face of the young master. As they flee, Salim watches them go, relieved they ran off with just a threat. He muses that a real fight might have resulted in a deduction of experience points. He concludes that the church is determined to control every healing mage. Later, while healing another child's injury, a notification appears. He has gained 100 experience points, leveled up to 10, acquired a new skill, and received a new message. A child thanks him, startling him slightly. He decides to check the details later, pleased with reaching level 10. Back in his room, he contemplates the new skill. He realizes it only restores stamina and cannot cure illnesses, making it tricky to use effectively. He resolves to follow the system's guidance, level up, and strengthen his mind to avoid the worst future he remembers. Amanda suddenly appears, having heard him. She exclaims that he can heal people, then clarifies her understanding. He can only help them regain stamina. She concedes that stamina is important too. Following this, Salim bursts into Grandpa Johan's shop, apologizing for the intrusion. He addresses Amanda directly, identifying her as the one who fixed his magical tool, and asks if her granddaughter is in the back room. Both Johan and Amanda are startled by his sudden appearance and questions. He bursts into the room, calling out for Zafi. The elderly woman, Amanda, quickly shushes him, explaining that her granddaughter has been bedridden for days. From the bed, the frail young woman apologizes, saying she is too tired to even sit up. A query materializes before him, offering the chance to assist with stamina recovery. He accepts the prompt, and a faint glow envelopes the room. Zafi sits up, bewildered, touching her face and remarking how much better she suddenly feels. The onlookers are stunned. Johan excitedly asks if he can cure illnesses, but Salim clarifies that his ability only restores strength temporarily. A notification confirms he has gained experience for his action. Later, while Salim sips from a mug, Johan explains the situation. He identifies the illness as Grelna disease, a common infection among the poor that targets those with low magical resistance. He reveals that Zafi is a poor child who was cast out by her husband after contracting the disease, leaving her with no one to rely on but him. He continues, his expression grim, describing it as a cruel illness that slowly weakens its victims until death. Johan explains that while high magical power is rare among commoners, it's their only defense. He pleads with Salim, asking if he would continue using his magic to ease his granddaughter's suffering. The shopkeeper's voice cracks with emotion as he dismisses the idea of payment. He declares he would sell the shop itself, if needed, shouting that Zafi is their only remaining joy in life. He calmly replies that he doesn't need money. He explains that healing provides him with experience, which is more than enough reward. He smiles gently, noting that Amanda's happiness is paramount. Overwhelmed, Johan thanks him profusely, his voice thick with gratitude. The treatment continued for a month. Zafi is seen outside, energetically shoveling snow. Amanda calls out, surprised and pleased to see her looking so lively. Zafi turns with a smile, agreeing that she hardly feels sick anymore, all thanks to him. As they observe her, Salim clarifies to Amanda that his skill doesn't cure the disease directly. He explains that by keeping her stamina up, it allows her body's natural resistance to fight the illness. He reflects that he's never been sick himself, but theorizes that nobles recover quickly from such things due to their high magic power, a conclusion Amanda finds sensible. Suddenly, a new notification appears before his eyes, announcing that the illness has been completely cured and awarding him 1,000 experience points. At that same moment, Zafi clenches her fist triumphantly, joking about whether she might actually be cured and thanking him warmly. Her jest proves to be reality. Salim looks at his system interface and confirms that she is, in fact, completely cured. Zafi is struck speechless, her eyes widening in disbelief as tears begin to form. From the doorway, Amanda cries out in astonishment, having overheard the miraculous news. She ran off, overjoyed, thanking him profusely and promising to tell her grandfather the miracle. As the young woman departed, Amanda explained to Salim that Grandpa Johan's shop serves as a regular meeting place for the families of those suffering from Grelna disease. Salim listened, a thoughtful expression on his face. He stood before the gathered families and clarified the nature of his ability. It was, he explained, a form of stamina support, and whether a person recovered or not depended entirely on their own resistance. A man organizing the group nodded in understanding, stating they would help and suggesting they begin with the houses closest to the shop. As they walked, Amanda confided in him. She had told Zafi about his stamina support, but had hesitated to tell everyone else until that day. She felt that if there was even a small chance for people to get better, they had to give them that hope. He began his work, moving from one sickbed to the next. With each person he aided, a wave of energy flowed, and he gained experience. The families watched, their faces etched with hope. After the third patient, he felt a surge of power. He had leveled up and acquired new skill. He understood, then, that even if a cure wasn't guaranteed, hope itself made a profound difference. He reflected on the new skill, cure diseases resistible through immunity. The name alone suggested it was worth testing immediately. With 3 patients left to see, he grew concerned about his remaining magic power, but decided he would ask the final patient if he could attempt it. He continued to support the stamina of the next 2 patients, gaining more experience. The description of his new skill lingered in his mind, that it would cause the patient's condition to rapidly change and consume their stamina. The wording was ominous, and he found it hard to believe the system would grant him a skill that was entirely useless. After treating the last patient, a young woman named Laura, the effect was immediate. She sat up in bed, her hands clasped together as she felt a sudden surge of energy. She declared it felt like a miracle, much to the astonishment of her family. Her father rushed to her side, overjoyed. As Laura suggested getting tea, Salim quickly cautioned her not to push herself, reminding her that returning stamina didn't mean she was fully healed. Internally, he noted his remaining magic power and realized he could try the new skill. He then announced he had a suggestion. He then told them that there might be a way to heal her illness all at once. The words hung in the air, met with stunned silence from both father and daughter. The question came from Johan. Why hadn't he mentioned this when treating Zafi? Salim explained that he had only just learned the skill from repeated use of his other abilities. He then delivered a grave warning. The method would cause rapid changes and drain stamina quickly. It might, he concluded with a grim expression, be painful. He apologizes for the suddenness of his offer, promising to return tomorrow to support her stamina. But the young woman, Laura, is resolute. Pushing through her pain, she declares her desire to be healed quickly. In response to his apology, she explains through tears that the illness has been painful from the very beginning. More than that, she doesn't want to continue being a burden on her husband. He tries to comfort her, suggesting they can take their time. Despite his words of comfort, the man asks Salim if there truly is a faster way to heal. even if it means more pain. Laura adds her own desperate plea. A confirmation flashes through Salim's mind. The disease is curable via immune manipulation. Seeing their resolve, he agrees to try. As he begins, Laura cries out in agony. A stream of information floods his awareness. Her stamina is being drained by the intense immune response, causing damage to her body. The system automatically combines his stamina support and healing skills, issuing a directive not to move more than 10 meters away from her. The sudden crisis throws the room into alarm. Her husband cries out, asking if she'll be all right, while the elderly woman, Amanda, notes her fever is spiking and rushes off to get something to cool her down. Salim can only watch the treatment's progression, a curse on his lips. He grits his teeth, gripped by self-reproach. He admits to himself that he wanted to test this skill, but now fears he trusted this unknown system too much. The thought that it could be a creation of the devil surfaces, yet he recalls how it always urges good deeds. He resolves to resist temptation and change the future, even if it means simply following the system's instructions for now. His internal struggle is interrupted by Laura's husband, who points out how late it is, worrying that Salim's absence from the castle will soon be noticed. But Salim knows he cannot leave her now. He remains by the bed, a profound anxiety gripping him, a feeling he hasn't known since his ordeal with the demon. Clenching his fist, he whispers Laura's name. Her husband notices his turmoil, but Salim can do nothing but watch, hoping his magic will be enough. The healing skill is entirely managed by the system, leaving him powerless to intervene. The tense night gives way to morning. Suddenly, Laura sits bolt upright, apologizing for keeping everyone awake and cheerfully offering to make breakfast. The abrupt recovery stuns the onlookers, and her husband cries out her name, asking if she is truly all right. As she speaks, a final notification confirms it. The illness is completely cured, and he has gained 1,000 experience points. He observes that she seems healed, and Laura confirms it, stating that aside from a little sluggishness, she feels absolutely wonderful. He turns to leave, but Laura's father rushes forward, apologizing profusely for ever doubting him. The man tries to press a bag of money into his hands, funds they had saved for the church, but Salim refuses it, stating he has more than enough. With the treatment concluded, he declares he is heading back, expressing only a quiet gladness that the girl was cured and a desire to be left alone. The grateful father, tears streaming down his face, thanks him again for saving Laura and insists that if Salim ever needs anything, he will do whatever he can to help. Salim internally reflects that there is nothing he truly needs from a man. Still, he looks at the earnest villager and considers the offer, stating that if the need arises, he will let him know. His decision is guided by a memory of Amanda's advice. If someone offers to help, just accept it. Following that wisdom feels right. With a small, genuine smile, he formally accepts the pledge. All right, he says, if I ever need anything, I'll ask. The father is overcome with gratitude, and in that moment of connection, a heart begins to grow. Salim's eyes flutter open to the sight of his maid, Mari, who is weeping with relief. She calls out his name, thankful that he has finally woken up. Groggy, he recognizes her and realizes it is morning. His awakening brings back memories of the previous day's confrontation. His father, Duke Bergman, had roared at him, demanding to know what he had been doing and accusing him of lacking the awareness befitting the heir to a ducal house. Salim could only stammer that he was helping people in the city. The memory of his father's fury is jarring, but the physical reality of his condition is even more so. He sits up in shock, realizing he must have stayed up all night using his skills to maintain an ice wall barrier. His magic reserves are almost completely depleted, and he understands now that he passed out from sheer exhaustion after raising the barrier and enduring his father's attacks. He slumps back onto the pillows, his attention returning to the present and to Mari. He asks if he caused her any trouble, but she quickly reassures him that he is fine. She insists that taking care of him is her job and pleads with him not to bow to someone of her station. Her gentle reassurance prompts a moment of introspection. As the heir of the Duke's family, he realizes it may be time to stop sneaking around. If he acts on his own and causes trouble, his caretaker Mari and others could be caught up in the consequences and punished. This newfound resolve is soon put to the test on the training grounds. His father confronts him, noting that he is finally awake. The Duke states that if he hadn't forgiven Salim's mistake yesterday, the boy would be dead. He offers a second chance, but makes it clear that to earn back his trust, Salim must now demonstrate his strength. He gives no time for a response. With a cry to begin, the Duke lunges forward, closing the distance in an instant. The sudden assault forces Salim to rely on pure instinct, dodging frantically. He recognizes his father is using physical enhancement magic. He knows he must keep evading while maintaining his barrier, as a direct confrontation would drain his already low mana, just like before. The Duke bellows at him to stop darting around and fight, punctuating his demand by conjuring a massive ball of fire. The fiery projectile hurtles towards him. He is confident he can dodge it, but a horrifying thought strikes him. There are servants inside the castle. To protect them, he erects an ice wall barrier. He knows he can handle a single fireball, but his magic points are already dangerously low. He strains against the attack, realizing his depleted mana is no match for his father's power. Despite his dwindling reserves, the barrier holds, a feat that does not go unnoticed. The Duke smirks, remarking that it was not bad at all. He warns Salim not to go easy, as one wrong move could have been a disaster. Then, to the boy's astonishment, his father offers a rare compliment. "You've grown strong, Salim." He reveals that a messenger from the church had visited weeks ago, expressing interest in taking Salim in due to a purported talent for healing magic. The Duke explains that he refused their rude and persistent offer, and when Salim didn't return for 2 nights, he suspected the church was the first place the boy had gone. Salim is taken aback, wondering what they could have been thinking to approach the heir of a duke's house. His father then asks directly if he can truly use healing magic, admitting he was on the verge of launching a fireball at their front door. Flustered, Salim clarifies that he can heal minor wounds and illnesses, but specifies that what he uses is a healing skill, not magic. Internally, he laments the hassle this system causes when he tries to be precise and curses the church members under his breath. The Duke scoffs, dismissing healing magic as a useless ability for nobles. He accuses Salim of sneaking out of the castle merely to satisfy his own ego by curing commoners, calling it pure hypocrisy. Salim reflects that while his father's words are harsh, they likely represent the common view among the nobility. Healing magic is rare, only treats minor ailments, and is ultimately devalued by high-level nobles who can simply heal themselves. He knows his ambition is far greater. His true goal is to accumulate experience by handling as many healing cases as possible. He believes that with enough practice, his skill could evolve to heal even injuries too severe for natural regeneration, a feat no mage in the entire country can currently accomplish. With determination in his eyes, Salim declares that as the firstborn of a duke's house, he will one day achieve this. His father observes his confidence and tells him to do as he wishes, seeing no point in restraining him further. As the Duke turns to leave, he privately considers that it might all be a bluff, but if the system did not flag the boy's claim as a lie, then perhaps it is truly possible. Now that his tutoring schedule has changed, he can finally go into town openly. Seated at a desk piled with books, Salim resolves to study medicine and pharmacology from the very beginning. He recalls treating Laura and realizes that while his healing skill works automatically via the system, relying on it blindly without proper knowledge is far too dangerous. This proves harder than anticipated. Medicine is the domain of the church, and finding a teacher is a significant hurdle. He has no connections among the high-ranking nobles or apothecaries. He tried asking for a tutor, but was flatly refused, as he has no intention of ever joining the church. He reasons that commoners are the most susceptible to illness, so he should inquire at the shops where the sick tend to gather. Just then, a loud crash echoes from outside, followed by shouting. An idea strikes him. He will ask Amanda the apothecary to teach him. He finds the elderly woman, who is shocked by his request. She huffs, saying that Johann must have sent him. She confirms she was an apothecary long ago, but is now retired. She questions why he would need her help, pointing out that he cured the Gerelna disease, something even she could not treat. Salim explains that while his skills can cure diseases, using them without proper knowledge is dangerous. Amanda sighs, conceding his point. She warns him that pharmacology takes decades of dedication, but she also acknowledges that letting someone with his power run loose without guidance would be a problem. Hating to get involved, she reluctantly agrees to teach him what she can, but only as long as he is in town. She refuses to leave. Overjoyed, Salim thanks her profusely. He apologizes for the deception and formally introduces himself as Salim Bergman, the eldest son of Duke Bergman, Lord of the region. Amanda sighs, unsurprised, noting that most people had already guessed he was a high-ranking noble due to his immense mana. She adds that since they thought his name was Ganbi, they simply treated him as such, as commoners don't know the proper etiquette for nobility anyway. Salim then asks if she plans to continue calling him Ganbi now that she is his apprentice. Amanda agrees to make their master-apprentice bond official. Salim, however, expresses a preference to continue being treated as Ganbi, explaining that he finds value in observing how commoners live and grow. Bemused, Amanda remarks on what a strange person the Lord's son is. With their arrangement settled, Amanda asks where they should begin. Salim states his desire to learn how to treat illnesses, theorizing that healing wounds and curing sickness follow the same underlying principles as physical enhancement. Amanda considers this, admitting it's been a long time since she retired, and she isn't sure how many sick people are around. She resolves to find some patients herself. Later, Salim stands before his new followers. An aide reports that 15 of them have passed the recent entrance exam for the Royal First Magic Academy. Combined with those already enrolled, his retinue now numbers 22. This news throws Gilbert into a panic. He laments that they are losing to the Louvier faction, which has 24 members, while the Marquis Sarmiento's faction has 16. He is aghast that over half of their own candidates failed, and that Valerie didn't even attempt the exam. Salim, however, calmly reassures his followers, telling them not to worry about the numbers and praising them for passing. His kind words move them. Internally, he reflects on how the Louvier family's harsh, military background and passion for hunting likely prepared their members well for the school's difficult exams. He recognizes that such frustrations and small cracks in morale are exactly what demons exploit. He then turns his attention to Valerie and Gilbert, stating that he no longer cares about the size of other noble factions. He asks for their help, revealing to them that he has gained the ability to heal the sick. He tasks Valerie with gathering information on the sick within the capital, explaining his intent to sharpen his healing skills by treating as many patients as possible. Valerie enthusiastically agrees, but privately wonders about Salim's true motives, resolving to remain cautious. With this new directive, Salim was able to continue his pharmacology studies with Amanda's guidance and the help of his aides. Gilbert, filled with renewed purpose, rallies the others, who all eagerly volunteer to assist their lord. Salim watches them, his expression thoughtful. His studies began in earnest. He and Amanda treated many patients side by side, most often encountering two specific illnesses: Grelna disease, which targets those with weak magic and immunity, and Zoran disease, which affects children. Amanda explains that Zoran disease is also known as the trial before 10, a rite of passage that every child must overcome, but one with a tragically high mortality rate. He arrived at an orphanage where a Zoran outbreak was underway. Kneeling by a child's bedside, he began his work as an older man. The director watched in awe. The director was stunned that Salim Sama, a noble who had already donated to them, was now personally treating the patients. From a nearby doorway, a small, healthy-looking girl peeked into the room. A little girl stepped into the room, asking if everyone was going to get better. The matron worriedly questioned if it was safe for her to be there, but Salim reassured her it was fine. He explained that for the child to be walking around during an outbreak meant she either possessed high magic power or strong immunity. He had told them before that some children, even nobles, catch Zoran but recover without ever showing symptoms. He turned his attention to the girl, reasoning that if the disease was spreading so widely, then this child was likely also affected. A soft glow emanated from his hand as he directed his magic towards her, assessing her condition. The girl gasped in surprise, suddenly exclaiming that her body felt incredibly light. Salim's diagnosis was confirmed. As he expected, even without developing symptoms, the illness had still drained her stamina. She eagerly asked if this meant they could all play together again. Salim smiled, assuring her that the other children would be feeling better soon, just like her. He encouraged her to cheer them on to help them get well faster. Nearby, another child in a bed murmured that he was glad he wasn't the only one who wasn't hurting, expressing a desire to be with everyone else. Salim was taken aback. He found it a strange thing for a child to say, as if the boy had wanted to suffer alongside his friends rather than be healthy alone. The little girl clarified, sniffling, that one of the sick children was her closest friend. She just wanted her to get better soon so they could play together again. Understanding, Salim knelt and gently placed a hand on her head, promising her that she would. Later, Salim attended to a different patient, a young man. He reflected that while he had seen many cases, some illnesses simply didn't respond to immune manipulation. He had managed to heal the man's skin irritation, but a persistent numbness in his leg remained. This illness was untreatable with his current methods. The young man cried out in despair, asking if he was never going to get better. Suddenly, Amanda stormed in, shouting that there would be no arguments. She force-fed the protesting young man a spoonful of green juice, declaring that this is what happens when you don't eat real food. The man gagged, calling it disgusting. Amanda retorted that she had to do it, having announced the project publicly, and couldn't have him getting sick now. Salim, bewildered, asked what was going on. As the young man admitted he was starting to feel better, Amanda explained the situation to Salim. The man had been causing a scene at the tavern, attempting a stunt where he ate only bread rolls for a year to get attention. She lectured that when one's diet is off balance, the mana in the body becomes unstable, leading to all sorts of problems. Salim absorbed this new information, realizing the world was full of strange illnesses he had yet to understand. He was soon confronted with another emergency. A distraught woman explained that her husband had eaten monster meat purchased from a suspicious merchant, despite her warnings. She pleaded for Salim to take a look, explaining it was a dire situation. Stepping towards the bed, he saw the man lying unconscious. Amanda was already there, explaining that while some monster meat is edible, other kinds can cause deadly food poisoning. As the wife wept, Salim recognized the illness as untreatable with his current abilities and murmured Amanda's name in dismay. Despite the grim outlook, Amanda sprang into action, telling Salim that the first priority was to help the man regain his strength. She administered a medicine specifically for monster meat poisoning, admitting that it would only slightly increase his chances of recovery, but it was better than nothing. The moment the medicine took effect, however, a notification appeared in his mind. The illness was now treatable. He let out a gasp of shock, realizing he could now use his immune manipulation to heal the man. His sudden reaction left Amanda and the wife completely bewildered. After the successful treatment, the grateful couple explained the significance of what had happened. The wife noted that while the medicine was known to have toxin-neutralizing properties, many still died after taking it. Thanks to Salim's power, they now had proof that the medicine truly did help with detoxification. He listened with a smile, realizing he would need to study even harder to effectively combine medication with his healing skills. He then wondered aloud about the active ingredient in Amanda's concoction. Amanda eagerly explained that it came from the poison glands of a frog-type monster, illustrating the principle of fighting poison with poison. She added that since the monster was only found in the Bergman territory, the medicine was highly valuable elsewhere. Seeing his interest, she offered to teach him how to prepare it before he left for the capital. He chuckled, remarking that she was like a witch from a storybook, an image that suited her well. He reflected that by learning so many things from Amanda, his own level had been steadily rising. That rise was soon quantified. Back in his room, a series of messages appeared before him, congratulating him on reaching level 30 and completing his beginner-level training. His reward was a new skill, forest bathing. A new main quest was also issued. Reach level 50, which would awaken his holy attribute and allow him to cancel out the dark attribute. He reviewed his growing list of skills, noting their rarity but limited applications. He calculated that, at his current pace, he would reach level 50 in about 3 months, just as his environment would change upon enrolling in the Royal Capital Academy. His resolve was clear. To gain the power needed to fight demons, he had to level up more. He stood in the grand hall of the estate, holding a small bouquet of roses as the entire staff of maids gathered to bid him farewell. The day of his departure had finally arrived. Turning to one of the maids, he thanked her for taking such good care of him. Through her tears, she wished the young master well, expressing how fortunate she felt to have served him. The children he had cured of the Grelna disease also chimed in, thanking him for relying on them, but he humbly dismissed their gratitude. As he spoke, a young man named Nagi approached, offering a single poppy. Nagi asked if he remembered a promise from long ago, stating that he had a favor to ask. Without hesitation, Salim agreed, promising to do anything he could. The crowd of well-wishers grew as Amanda and other villagers arrived, all bearing flowers. They thanked him for everything. The children he'd saved addressed him as Your Highness, praising his devotion to treating everyone in town. He felt they were exaggerating, noting to himself that people who heal without expecting anything in return are truly rare. His gaze fell upon a small, slightly wilting flower held out by one of the children. The child asked if he had picked the flowers from Amanda's garden for him. Salim realized, with a pang in his heart, how long the child must have been waiting there to give it to him. Moved by their collective gratitude, he gathered all the flowers into a massive, vibrant bouquet. He considered it a precious gift, hoping it wouldn't wither. A notification for vital support appeared, as if the system itself was celebrating his departure. With a bouquet in his arms, he turned to the crowd, thanked them all, and announced, I'm off. At the Royal Capital's first Academy of Magic, a new year begins with great anticipation. The Crown Princess herself is enrolling, prompting powerful nobles from across the country to send their children in hopes of them becoming her close companions. Among them is Salim Bergman, standing with his peers, ready to begin his academic life. With the entrance ceremony finally over, Gilbert expresses his relief while Valerie wonders about the food of the welcome party. Valerie then notes that Salim seems familiar with the academy, asking if he's been there before. Salim confirms that while this is his first time here in this life, it is his second time enrolling overall. He possesses memories of a future that has already passed. He recalled that terrible future. In the winter of his second year, he had succumbed to a demon's temptation, becoming a demon lord only to be slain by the hero. With his power, he destroyed the kingdom. His body turned to black mist, his soul devoured for over a decade until, just as the last fragment was about to disappear, he awoke in his 14-year-old body before ever setting foot in the academy. His second chance came with a new directive. Upon arriving at the royal capital, a mysterious system gave him a quest to resist the demon's temptation. Though he didn't understand it, he now follows the system's guidance, leveling up to strengthen his will and train his heart against the coming darkness. His preparations to avert that fate began a week before the entrance ceremony. He and the others attending the academy arrived at the massive estate of House Bergman. There, Gilbert expressed his awe at the luxurious mansion. Salim, however, dismissed it as the Duke's pride and urged his companions not to hold back, asking for their help in training his healing skills. Valerie readily agreed. Later, inside the mansion, Valerie introduced two individuals to him, a man who had served the estate for many years and a woman from a merchant family with ties to the Duke's household. They were tasked with finding patients. Valerie advised that due to the church's great influence in the capital, it would be best to conduct healing training discreetly at night. Salim thanked them for the arrangements. Despite the plan for discretion, the woman immediately brought an urgent matter to his attention. She stammered that they had already found someone in desperate need of help, even though it was still daytime. When Salim asked about the problem, she explained that while she couldn't cure the illnesses, she could at least examine the symptoms. Unconcerned with the time, Salim declared they would go at once. As they headed out, he recognized the ailment from his past life: food poisoning from contaminated monster meat, an illness with a high fatality rate. He recalled treating it in his own territory with Amanda's guidance. Knowing the poor villagers couldn't afford the expensive medicine, he resolved to bring it to them immediately. Their guide apologized as they arrived in a dilapidated part of the city, too narrow for carriages. Walking past cracked walls and damaged roofs, Salim noted that this was a district for the poor, and that even the commoners in the Duke's lands lived in better conditions. He realized he would need to conserve his magical power for healing. Patching up the buildings with earth magic would have to wait. He looks upon the suffering villagers, their groans of pain filling the small room. He recognizes the symptoms immediately. They are identical to what afflicted Amanda. In his past life, he never would have spared a thought for a place like this. But now he understands that the societal cracks that allowed the demon's invasion were already present, even back then. He counts 7 people in total. The system confirms the illness is treatable through immune manipulation and that 7 is the maximum number of individuals he can handle with his parallel operation skill. Deciding to first use medicine to ease their symptoms, he prepares to activate the ability, a healing-type skill that allows for simultaneous treatment. Meanwhile, outside, the blonde princess adamantly refuses to leave. She insists that since they are in the royal capital, they cannot leave Selim unattended and must stand guard properly. From inside, Selim's voice reaches his other attendants, telling Katia and Valerie that the treatment will take a while and they are free to stretch their legs if they become bored. He seems to have anticipated their concerns. He instructs the steward to rotate the team of 22 attendants to prevent anyone from overexerting themselves. He clarifies that while Katia's primary duty is his protection, Valerie still has studies to attend to. Valerie acknowledges the command, and Selim adds that he will stay and watch over him as well. After some time, the treatment is complete. The villagers begin to stir, murmuring that they are starting to feel better. Confused, one asks who he is. He introduces himself as Selim Bergman, heir to the Duke's house, and explains that his attendants have brought porridge for them. The revelation of his noble status leaves them speechless. Their shock quickly turns to overwhelming gratitude. They can't believe the son of a duke helped them. As they eat, they exclaim how divine the porridge tastes, soothing their weakened stomachs. They are rendered speechless by the kindness, knowing their own desperation led them to eat the tainted food in the first place. One of the young men explains their situation. They all came from the same orphanage and were trying to start a small business together. He admits it's been tough, but being with friends makes it worthwhile. They had made a mistake and bought cheap meat, which was their undoing. They thank Selim profusely as he quietly observes their resilience. As their gratitude fills the room, a series of notifications floods his vision. The system confirms he has cured the illness for all 7 people, awarding him 1,000 experience points for each cure. The sudden influx of 7,000 points causes him to level up instantly, and he gasps as a wave of power surges through him. He processes the massive gain, realizing that if he could gain experience at this rate every day, he would become unstoppable. His thoughts are interrupted as one of the young boys tugs on his coat, expressing his happiness that everyone is okay and calling the young lord a kind person. His focus shifts as he finds himself at a bustling party venue. It has been a long time since he was surrounded by so many people. He understands that his life from now on will be a world full of politics and schemes, a stark contrast to the simpler days when he could joke around with Amanda. He recalled his future self's pride as the heir of the Duke family, an arrogance that only earned him mockery and hatred. Now, he understood he must act with careful composure simply to avoid being looked down upon. Determined not to repeat that future, he resolved to carry himself with the elegance of a true noble. This subtle shift in demeanor did not go unnoticed. A group of young ladies began staring and whispering amongst themselves as he passed. He found the sudden attention from the other students unsettling. Ever since the entrance ceremony, he'd been receiving gazes like these, a stark contrast to his memories. He mused that his past arrogance had repelled people, whereas his current, gentler nature, a product of his other life, drew them in. His eyes then fell upon Liselot, the daughter of Viscount Belt. He remembered that in the future he knew she had never once looked at him with such admiration. His thoughts were interrupted by the arrival of Crown Princess Rafaela, who entered with only 2 attendants. Valerie Meldars commented on the small retinue, but Selim corrected him. He explained that the princess simply found large crowds annoying and was not interested in factions, despite leading the largest one in the academy and having plenty of attendants at her disposal. He approached and offered a formal greeting, introducing himself as Selim Bergman, firstborn of his house, and stating it was an honor to attend the academy with her. Princess Rafaela acknowledged him coolly, saying she looked forward to their time together. As she spoke, a chilling memory surfaced. Even in the future, when he had become a demon, he had never been able to defeat her. His mind turned to her lineage. The current king had 2 daughters, Princess Rafaela and the younger Princess Amelia. From an early age, Rafaela had been chosen as the crown princess due to her extraordinary magical power. Looking at her now, she seemed delicate, perhaps only 15. Because he remembered the future, she seemed even younger than he recalled. Yet despite this youthful appearance, it was said her combat skills rivaled those of the very first king. He remembered that she never cared for small talk and decided to keep his greetings brief. As he prepared to take his leave, he observed her face, finding only a blank, unreadable expression. Before he could move away, another young woman approached the princess. He recognized Lady Gelsamina Durrani, whose family had been asked by the Duke's house to act as a bridge to the princess. Gelsamina cheerfully complimented the princess's grace and brought up a popular novel, remarking how one of its characters was uncannily similar to Lord Bergman. He watched them, relieved to have gotten through his own introduction. Now, he just had to wait for the others to greet her. The thought of getting any closer to the princess was still unimaginable. He then recalled that Gelsamina, even in the future, had always been kind to him. He reflected on the crown princess. As overwhelming as her strength was, she remained quiet and indifferent to those around her. When it came to overall ability, including political skill, he believed that the daughter of a certain marquis might actually be superior. As if summoned by his thoughts, a young woman with long, dark hair approached him. With a graceful curtsy, she introduced herself as Nadia Louiver, the eldest daughter of Marquis Louver, and offered her formal greetings to Prince Selim Bergman. He recognized her instantly. She was the one rumored to be even more capable than the princess. He returned the pleasantry, stating that he looked forward to spending the next 3 years with her at the academy. Nadia agreed, noting that House Louver had sent 24 students from their territories, even more than his own house. But Selim's mind drifted to a future he alone remembered, a future where, after the capital fell to demons, House Louver resisted to the end, saving countless lives. He knew her command ability then was unmatched, making her a key figure in the coming war. Her voice pulled him back to the present. She informed him that word of his reputation had already reached her marquis. She knew of his work developing magical tools for poor villagers and, more recently, his use of healing magic to help the sick. With a hand placed over her heart, she looked at him with sincere admiration. She declared his actions truly admirable, confessing that she wished she could be like him one day. Her knowledge left him momentarily stunned. He had only recently learned healing magic and had practiced it in secret, yet she already knew. He realized this was a small flex of the Marquis family's impressive intelligence network. Nearby, Gilbert watched the interaction with a scowl, muttering about how much Selim annoyed him. His thoughts were interrupted by another student calling his name. A stocky young man with a bowl cut introduced himself as Mark, third son of the Marquis house, Sarmiento. Selim recognized him immediately. In his past life, Mark had been one of the few people at the academy he genuinely got along with. He smiled, thinking they should make the most of the next 3 years. However, Mark's expression was unexpectedly severe. He leaned closer, asking if they could ever be friends again, and then voiced his wish that Selim would come to better understand the church. The statement left Selim baffled. As Mark turned away, telling him to come speak with him once he had repented, Selim finally understood. Mark's uncle was the Archbishop of the capital, the highest authority of the church in the kingdom. The Sarmiento lands bordered the Holy Kingdom, placing them heavily under its influence. For a family with such deep ties to the church, someone like him, using healing magic while unaffiliated was an unacceptable presence. Friendship was impossible. His companions, meanwhile, were reacting to the conclusion of the formal greetings. Gilbert Benson complained that the two Marquis families were a pain, but Valerie Meldars, ever serious, declared that they must work together to prove the superiority of their duke's family. Selim observed their fervor. He sighed, reflecting on the nature of the freshman welcome party. While nobles appeared elegant, they were fundamentally a warrior class, protecting their lands through strength. It seemed he would have to keep their fiery tempers in line. He then addressed his group, instructing them to go talk to anyone who caught there, regardless of their territory or status. His gaze drifted across the venue. He knew the commoner hero was present somewhere, but an unspoken rule divided the space between nobility and commoners. He had hoped to greet the hero, but realized that going out of his way to do so now would only draw unwanted attention. The thought brought forth a stark memory, the face of the very hero who, in another life, defeated him after he had become a demon. His mind then shifted to the second key figure in the room, Nadia Louver, daughter of a marquis. He understood their critical importance. The hero's battle strength and Nadia's ability to command. Both would be needed to stand against the coming demonic threat. As he resolved to wait for the right moment to approach them, a voice called out. It was Lisa Lotbelt. She remarked on how much he'd changed since they last met. Confused, Selim asked when that was, and she replied it was last summer. He internally noted that for him, a great deal had happened since last fall, the point at which he began reliving his life. Lisa Lot continued, acknowledging she'd heard of his recent activities in the capital, which might explain his changed outlook. Selim offered a carefully constructed reason. Those who use healing magic often develop gentle personalities, and adopting this persona would prevent his rapid leveling from appearing suspicious. She seemed to accept this, musing that a year ago, he came across as a terrible villain from a bad show. Her demeanor then shifted entirely. She clasped her hands, her face flushing as she gushed about how gentle and refined he was now, like a hero from a romance novel. Her imagination was running wild, leaving Selim utterly bewildered by the sudden change. He stared dumbfounded. Was Lisa Lot always like this? The woman he remembered from the future was cool, composed, and mature, his ideal type, honestly. As she continued, glad to see this side of him and warning that other noble ladies would now pursue him, he came to a startling conclusion. He had completely misjudged people up until now. He found himself the sudden focus of a group of female students. Princess Rafaela's eyes sparkled as she called him dreamy, while others shyly wondered if they could speak to him. One girl pointed excitedly, urging her friends to look. Surrounded by the unexpected crowd, he internally reeled. This level of attention was completely new. Nothing like this had happened in his previous life. He realized his school days were going to be far more chaotic than he ever imagined. Behind him, Lisa Lot winked, playfully remarking on his popularity on the very first day. She advised him to take his time, but cheekily warned him not to let the other girls snatch him away. At the academy's training grounds, the first semester's classes begin. For Selim Bergman, this is his second chance at school life, and he resolves to stay focused. His primary goal is to raise his level to 50, a requirement from the system to awaken his holy attribute and prevent himself from turning into a demon again. An instructor addresses the assembled students, telling them to don their armor for the general swordsmanship class. He recognizes that the lesson structure is identical to how it was before he turned back time. A nearby student clarifies the rules for the upcoming matches. They're not allowed to use body enhancement magic, only sword skills. The armor is enchanted, he adds, so they don't need to worry about injury. Following this explanation, the instructor asks who wants to have the first match. Without hesitation, Mark, from the noble Sarmiento family, raises his hand and volunteers, declaring that he would be honored to have a match with Lord Bergman. He sighs, sensing the palpable hostility radiating from Mark. Despite this, he agrees to the match, realizing it works out perfectly. His sword teacher, Katia, had told him he relies too much on magic, and this will be an excellent opportunity for proper sword training. The two students take their positions opposite each other, swords drawn. At the instructor's signal to begin, the match commences. As their blades meet, Mark smirks, commenting that at least Salim can block now. Salim assesses their clash, concluding that without magic, their strength is more or less equal. His opponent presses the attack relentlessly. Mark taunts him, asking how he'll handle the next blow. Salim struggles under the force of the strikes, realizing that every hit feels heavy. With his lighter build and the inability to use body enhancement magic, he is at a clear physical disadvantage. The barrage is too much to withstand. The instructor calls an end to the match, declaring Mark the winner. Salim is forced to a knee, defeated, as Mark stands over him in triumph. A wide, gloating grin spreads across Mark's face. He internally celebrates his victory, savoring the feeling of having beaten the eldest son of a duke. He turns to the other students, who are whispering among themselves. Salim, still on the ground, looks up in bewilderment. He doesn't understand what Mark is so proud of. It was only a practice match where magic was forbidden. He sat on a bench, listening as his friend Gilbert Benson passionately declared that if anyone challenged him again, Gilbert should be allowed to fight in his place. For a noble, Gilbert argued, winning or losing reflects on their honor, and it was permissible to send a skilled subordinate to fight when challenged. His friend was fired up, eager to demonstrate the strength of House Bergman for Salim's victory. Valerie Meldars, however, offered a different perspective, stating that while Gilbert was indeed skilled, he believed one learns more by facing strong opponents, even in defeat. Gilbert's fervor seemed to deflate, realizing his proposal wouldn't work. He understood. With his friends hyping him up so much, he felt he had to live up to their expectations. He recalled the previous future, where all that expectation had turned into immense pressure. The memory of his first duel against the hero surfaced, a loss that had nearly broken his mind. His thoughts shifted to the present. In this timeline, at an academy where nobles held all the power, a commoner boy like the hero was barely noticed. He suddenly realized he hadn't seen the commoner hero at all. The realization struck him. It was his fault. The hero had only gained attention in the other timeline because he had defeated Salim. This time, however, Salim had faced Mark instead. He resolved, with an internal apology to his friends, that he would have to take another humiliating loss. Unaware of this inner turmoil, Gilbert clenched his fist, vowing that he wouldn't lose next time. 3 days later, the swordsmanship instructor announced that the day's class would also feature practice matches, inviting anyone who wished to fight first to step forward. Mark Sarmiento immediately did so, smirking at Salim and offering a rematch. Gilbert prepared to intervene, but Salim stopped him, thinking it would be a boring lesson to face the same opponent again. His true intention was different. He had to challenge the hero. It was necessary to make the hero famous and stronger, lest they face trouble when the demon eventually attacked. Losing twice in a row would upset his friends, but it was a price he was willing to pay. As he steeled himself, a clear voice cut through the air, asking Prince Bergman for a sparring match. The challenger was Princess Rafaela, who stood ready with her sword, her gaze fixed and serious. As the princess awaited his answer, Salim internally wrestled with his options. He knew he couldn't turn down an invitation from royalty. Letting Gilbert take his place was also not a viable strategy. The princess was known for her overwhelming strength. He reasoned that even a loss to her would be less humiliating than his defeat at Mark's hands. Turning to Gilbert, he dismissed his concern and stepped forward, accepting the duel. He now faced her on the dueling grounds. Looking at her, he noted her seemingly light and fragile build, which would normally be a disadvantage in a sword fight. However, he knew the truth was far different. The duel began in an instant. She lunged with blinding speed, the pressure from her attack so immense it felt as though he were being assaulted by multiple blades at once. He recognized this overwhelming power. It was the same she had used against him in the previous timeline, after he had become a demon. He managed to parry the ferocious strike, their blades locking with a shower of sparks. They stood frozen for a moment, face to face, the sheer force of the impact resonating through their arms. Staring into her unwavering eyes, he heard her utter a single command: "Give up." In that moment, he fully understood. Her overwhelming skill made her physical build completely irrelevant. She was, without a doubt, the most battle-hardened warrior he had ever encountered. 1 week later, on the training grounds, a new instructor for offensive magic introduced himself as Stein. He presented a special magical armor from the Magic Research Institute that could neutralize incoming spells. As students murmured, Salim confirmed to a surprised Gilbert that Stein was his former private tutor. Stein announced that the rare armor would be distributed, but students below the rank of Baron would only observe. He then singled out Salim, challenging him to demonstrate his capabilities. He approached Salim, remarking that back in the territory, Salim often slacked off during magic training. He expressed a pointed hope that Salim would take his studies at the Royal Academy more seriously, lest he fall behind. Salim formally greeted his old tutor, acknowledging that it had been some time since they last met. He internally grimaced at Stein's passive-aggressive tone. He recalled that after his father gave permission, Stein's training sessions were immediately cut short. In the old future, he had mistaken those excessively long sessions for dedication, believing it was the only path to improvement. Now, he saw things differently. His opponent for the day, the second son of a count chosen by lottery, was actually a young woman. After confirming that everyone had their armor, she announced the start of the matches. Taking her stance, she cast a fireball spell directly at Salim. Her spell fizzled out harmlessly against the glowing runes of his armor. He stood perfectly still, unimpressed by the display. His opponent stared in awe at the armor's power, while Gilbert noted aloud that the other students were just standing around, watching. He watched as the Marquis's daughter, Nadia Louisver, unleashed a flurry of magical attacks against Princess Rafaela, laughing with delight at her own display of power. The princess, however, stood completely unaffected, the assault doing nothing at all. Nadia chuckled, remarking that it was to be expected from the princess. From the sidelines, Salim noted that since it was training between skilled fighters, one didn't need to rely on defensive equipment if they could defend themselves. The sight stirred a painful memory within him. In the previous timeline, he had caused a terrible incident using this very same magical equipment. The memory sharpened. After losing the duel to the hero, he had become obsessed. Determined not to be looked down upon for losing to a commoner, he resolved to prove his superiority in magic, unleashing a powerful ice bullet that caused panic and sent others scrambling for medical aid. He had trusted Stein's words that it was safe to go all out. As a result, he cast a spell at full power without considering his opponent's actual skill, leaving the boy with a permanent, serious injury. To make matters worse, he had panicked and cruelly blamed the injured boy for being too weak. This enraged the hero, who then challenged him and beat him senseless, a truly traumatic memory. Shaking it off, Salim resolved that this time, he would take it slow and consider his opponent. He began to form a controlled ice bullet. His opponent, a nervous female student, was amazed by the defensive magic of the armor Stein provided. She knew it could block magic at this level, but she also understood it wouldn't hold up against serious spells from high-ranking nobles with strong mana. He watched her reaction with a wry smile. He would hold back, of course, but decided to keep an eye on things just in case. With a laugh, he goaded the others, inviting someone to train with something truly powerful. His challenge was immediately met by Mark Sarmiento, who began gathering an immense amount of energy. With a crazed laugh, Mark declared he would unleash an earth cannon, thinking that perhaps this time, he would be the one to make Salim look like the villain. As the spell formed, Salim moved instantly, positioning himself in front of Gilbert to shield him. A swirling barrier of magic formed around them as he sternly told Mark to hold back, reminding him that the defensive armor was not invincible. He demands to know what she is thinking, warning that a direct hit from her spell could have caused a serious accident. The female student, however, waves a dismissive hand, telling Prince Salim not to interfere. She claims she was just about to show Mark a powerful spell, insisting that the magical gear he's wearing cannot fully block the attacks of high-ranking nobles. As Stein also tells him to stand down, dismissing the armor as a cheap trinket, Salim sighs. He explains that the gear is incredibly fragile and that he still owes Mark a rematch from their sword duel. To settle things, he declares he will fight the female student himself and break the armor to prove his point. Amused by his interruption, she accepts his challenge. She confidently grants him the first strike. Without hesitation, he unleashes an ice bullet. The spell strikes his own chest plate, the impact jarring him. He internally notes that the power was just enough that he barely avoided the vital spots. His goal is simply to demonstrate how flimsy the armor truly is. The armor cracks under the blow. The female student is shocked, and Stein rushes forward, pointing out that the armor can no longer defend against Mark's magic. Salim looks down at the fractured pieces on the floor, filled with regret. He silently curses himself for ever trusting the person who made such faulty equipment. His opponent laughs, mocking him. She reveals that in a past future, she was captured during a rebellion that destroyed the kingdom, implying she has knowledge of another timeline. She declares that simply getting hurt isn't enough to convince him of the danger and prepares to cast another earth cannon. Salim realizes with grim certainty that she has no intention of stopping her assault. He quickly apologizes to Mark, telling him to bear with what's coming. As his opponent notices him erecting a barrier spell, Salim unleashes a swift counterattack, an ice cutter. The blades of ice slice across her arm, and she cries out in pain. She clutches her bleeding arm, dismissing the wound as a minor cut that anyone from Marquis family could heal. But Salim is stunned by a message that appears only to him. His experience points have been reduced by 1,000 for intentionally hurting someone. A chilling realization washes over him. Hurting someone and then belittling them was exactly the kind of behavior that caused him to be hated in his previous life. He worries he is repeating his past mistakes. In stark contrast, Gilbert Benson cheers wildly, praising him for beating the Sarmiento girl and declaring that she deserved it. The other students echo his sentiment. He observes his aides, noting their hot-blooded nature. He understands that to them, especially nobles whose honor is tied to victory, his actions are seen as justified retaliation for the insult Mark gave him during swordsmanship class. They believe a debt has been properly repaid. The damaged armor finally shatters completely. Stein stares in disbelief, unable to comprehend how the supposedly durable gear failed. Salim explains that the magical power of high-ranking nobles is on a completely different level, expressing his offense that Stein believes such armor could offer any real protection. He then offers the broken pieces to the other students, suggesting they borrow it to learn firsthand not to overestimate magical tools and cause accidents. Stein is left speechless, forced to confront his underestimation of the nobility's true strength. He stood over his defeated opponent, who was now being tended to by another student. He had expected this outcome to provoke the hero into challenging him, but the training hall remained quiet. He realized that, unlike in the past future where he had simply assaulted someone, this was a proper duel between nobles with a history. The hero, a commoner, had no reason to intervene. As he processed this, his friend Gilbert cheerfully remarked that it was good enough that no one was seriously injured. The part-time instructor, Stein, simply agreed that it figured. Their words were lost on him as a new message materialized in his vision. He had gained 100 experience points for acting for others despite his loss. A moment of stunned silence gave way to internal fury. If the system was going to praise him now, why had it taken away 1,000 points just moments before? His sudden, frustrated exclamation left his companions staring at him in confusion, unaware of the contradictory forces at play. Inside the academy, Gilbert Benson enthusiastically reports on their new life in the capital. He declares that since they dismantled Sarmiento's faction, Salim Bergman's reputation for magic has been excellent. Valerie Meldars concurs, adding that Salim's abilities are finally being properly evaluated. Salim reflects on his initial anxieties, admitting he wasn't sure how things would turn out, but it seems his life at the academy is proceeding smoothly. His expression darkens. Internally, he refutes the idea. Things are not going smoothly at all. 3 weeks have passed since enrollment, and the hero has received absolutely no attention. He recalls the previous future, where the hero had quickly become the center of attention at the academy. The catalyst for that fame had been the hero's victory over him, but this time, that event never occurred. Sipping his drink, he considers the dire implications. If the hero remains unnoticed, it will be a disaster. At this academy, students only receive a basic education unless they belong to a faction. The advanced magic passed down through noble families for generations is not taught openly. One needs connections to learn anything of true depth. His thoughts continue, focused on the future. The hero must quickly gain recognition, join a respectable faction, and be placed in an environment suited to his talents. He needs to grow stronger to stand against the demons that will eventually threaten them all. He wonders what his next move should be. Perhaps he should approach the hero directly? But he hesitates, realizing that since the hero is being ignored by the capital's populace, any direct involvement from him, a member of the Queen's faction, would be seen as political interference. As he contemplates his options, Gilbert and Valerie approach. Gilbert asks what's wrong, but Salim barely registers his question. His attention is fixed on the hero in the distance. He realizes with a start that the pained look on the hero's face isn't one of hatred, as he'd assumed. It's something else entirely. He has misjudged the situation. Their conversation is cut short by a sudden commotion from the courtyard. The distinct sounds of a brawl echo through the air. Gilbert cries out in shock, identifying the scene as a group lynching. Salim sees the hero, surrounded, deftly evading every physical blow from his attackers. He thinks this might be an opportunity to intervene and help, but his resolve falters when he sees the assailants begin to chant for a simultaneous magic attack. Realizing this has gone too far, he shouts for them to stop. But before anyone can act, the hero unleashes his own power. With a sharp gesture, he conjures a powerful gale of wind magic, blasting his attackers away in a single, decisive move. Salim and the other onlookers can only stare, stunned into silence by the unexpected display of force. He turns to leave, his display of power leaving the onlookers stunned. Salim Bergman cries out, calling him hero, and lamenting that he's leaving just after they've finally met. The other students, including Princess Rafaela and Lady Louiver, watch in disbelief. As he walks away, the hero is taken aback by Salim's sudden change in demeanor. The young nobleman is laughing joyfully, shouting about how incredible the display was. The hero questions why Salim is the only one not trying to defeat him. His companions, Gilbert and Valerie, catch up to him, urging him to wait. Gilbert complains that he's never seen such a smile on Salim's face before. With a wide grin, Salim explains that his research indicates heroes should be cheerful, and he wants to spar with this one. He makes a bold promise. If he wins, he'll make the hero smile. He dismisses the offer without a second thought, stating his lack of interest. Gilbert erupts in anger at the disrespect shown to Salim, the heir to the Bergman duchy. Salim, however, simply laughs, seemingly delighted by the hero's straightforward and dismissive attitude. His gaze sharpens as he addresses the young noble by his full name. He asks directly if Salim was not, in fact, undergoing treatment for food poisoning just 3 weeks prior. The question wipes the smile from Salim's face, leaving him stunned and questioning how the hero could possess such information. The hero recalls the whispers among the other students, who spoke of the Duke's son as if he were a character straight out of a popular story. He then reveals the connection. The people who treated Salim were his own childhood friends. He looks at the young noble, asking for confirmation. The realization strikes Salim. He now understands he is indebted to the hero and declares he will accept a match if that is what's desired. He inwardly notes that the Seeker's activities have proven useful. Seeing the situation unfold, Princess Rafaela intervenes, placing a hand on the hero's shoulder. She points out that a specific corner of the training grounds is reserved for the Bergman family's private use and instructs the hero's group to clear the space for the duel. He readily agrees. As they prepare to face one another, the young noble formally reintroduces himself as Salim Bergman. The hero replies in kind, stating his name is Leo, an orphan with no surname. He tells the hero to call him Salim, declaring that their duel will now begin. With no rules, he permits both magic and swords, inviting Leo to attack as he pleases, acknowledging him as the future hero who will defeat the Demon King. Leo simply agrees. The duel commences in a flash of movement. Leo lunges, his blade meeting Salim's in a shower of sparks as a magical circle materializes around them. As their eyes lock, Salim internally notes the strange sensation of facing the man who defeated his future self. Salim effortlessly parries the blow, holding up a hand to halt the exchange. The spectators, including Gilbert, murmur in admiration at his composure, observing that he is allowing his opponent to attack freely. Salim thinks to himself that he has more than enough leeway. With their blades still crossed, he acknowledges that the hero is indeed powerful. He explains that neither of them will suffer a fatal wound from the other, as their mutual trust in each other's high skill level allows them to spar with such confidence. Leo considers the situation. He is facing the 15-year-old version of the man who would become the Demon King. Recalling that his own victory was at age 17, he knows he has the advantage of experience. Salim, however, believes the advantage is his and unleashes an ice bullet spell. He narrowly dodges the icy projectile, a thin line of blood appearing on his hand. Salim smirks, telling him not to hold back, as he is well aware of Leo's true power. He encourages him to use his intermediate-level wind magic without reservation. In response, Leo raises his hand, unleashing a powerful vortex of wind. Salim's expression turns to one of pure delight, urging him to come at him with more flashy magic and techniques to demonstrate his talent for all to see. The spectators watch, stunned. The display leaves the spectators buzzing with excitement. Gilbert exclaims over Leo's incredible strength, while Valerie questions his origins as a commoner from the royal nursing home with no known faction. Nadia laughs, seeing him as a future top military asset for the Duke's house, and Princess Rafaela quietly notes how interesting her first opponent is. As the duel concludes, Gilbert approaches Leo, apologizing on Salim's behalf. He explains that when nobles or royalty discover someone strong, their first instinct is to recruit them. He assures Leo that the Duke's house is no different and would want to secure such a talented person with favorable treatment. Leo firmly replies that he has no intention of leaving the land where he was born and raised. Salim steps in, telling his friends not to be so persistent. He advises against forceful recruitment, stating that it would be troublesome to make an enemy of a hero. He listened as Leo explained that his current state was not enough to be considered a threat. Leo noted that while his attack was strong, it was simple enough to be endured. However, he mused that if he were to combine the wind magic he'd just used with fire magic, things might be different. Intrigued by this possibility, Salim's eyes lit up. He extended a hand towards Leo, challenging him to try it right then and there, proclaiming that he could become even stronger. Accepting the challenge, Leo's expression hardened with focus. A vortex of powerful energy began to swirl around his outstretched hand, the air crackling with nascent power. Gilbert watched in amazement, remarking that Leo was able to replicate the magic after seeing it only once. Salim reflected internally that witnessing this talent firsthand was unsettling. It sparked a desire to have such a power on his side, changing his feelings on the matter. He then turned to Leo, stating that the matter wasn't finished. Salim asked if Leo was aware that the hero possessed an exceptionally high ability to copy the magic of others, warning him that this very power would cause him significant trouble in the future. Leo could only respond with a questioning look. The other nobles interjected. Gilbert enthusiastically suggested that if the Bergman Duchy were to form a contract with Leo, he could use their family's magic and become a great asset. Leo found the entire proposition tedious, but Gilbert pressed on, explaining that in noble society, it was considered rude not to offer the use of such wonderful magic. Taking charge, Salim instructed Valerie to write a letter to the Cole family on Leo's behalf, which Valerie acknowledged immediately. Salim explained to Leo that even for someone without rank, sending a letter was a simple formality and far better than receiving a formal, unavoidable summons. He continued, warning Leo that life at the academy was governed by unwritten rules he wouldn't know. He brought up the trouble Leo had already encountered in the courtyard, reminding him that the first magic academy was a domain of nobles. As a commoner, Leo would inevitably face disrespect and challenges, especially since the royal family was not to be trusted. Therefore, Salim advised, If Leo was to enroll, he should have at least one official document to his name. He made a promise. If Leo wished to use magic in the future, Salim and his companions would come to him to confirm it. With his friends standing behind him, Salim formally asked Leo to become his follower, urging him to rely on them for support. Surrounded by the expectant gazes of the noble students, Leo looked down for a moment before meeting Salim's eyes with a faint smile and quietly accepting with a simple thank you. As Leo accepts the new arrangement, Salim watches him, a notification materializing in his vision. It confirms he has helped an isolated classmate, granting him 200 experience points and bringing his total to 220 out of 3,600 for level 35. Satisfied, Salim considers this a good step toward deepening their friendship. He muses on Leo's solitude, wondering if the Duke's system had made him a loner. The thought strikes a personal chord. Salim recalls how his own pride was once wounded by the burden of being a commoner hero. Yet, he recognizes that Leo is not so simple. He must have faced immense struggles in an academy dominated by nobles. In that moment, Salim feels he has seen a glimpse of the hero's potential, welcoming him as a new companion into his circle. Within the academy grounds, Gilbert Benson remarks on the recent arrival of Leo to the Bergman ducal house, noting that he and the young master, Salim, are both 15. Valerie Meldars interjects, finding it unreasonable to suddenly assign a peer to Salim at this age. Gilbert counters that Leo is the commoner hero from the capital, and his presence is a chance for their academy to distinguish itself. As his attendants discuss the matter, Salim quietly resolves to watch over the newcomer from a distance, without interfering. Meanwhile, Leo is told that he will surely be of great use to the country in the future, and that he must endeavor to grow stronger no matter where he is assigned. He listens with a determined expression, understanding that the power of a hero is essential to combat the demons that will one day threaten them all. The news of this forced recruitment weighs on Salim's mind. He considers the haste to secure talented individuals, reflecting that it would be a great disaster if they couldn't properly train someone after compelling them into service. Hearing his master's unspoken command, Valerie clasps his hands together with fervent understanding. He declares that he will watch over Leo, just as instructed, without getting too involved, and confirms that he will arrange for a carriage immediately. As they walk through a stone corridor, Salim informs his attendants that he will be continuing his pharmacology studies off campus. He mentions that Amanda, an elder from his territory, has provided him with a letter of introduction to a pharmacist in the capital. Valerie expresses his unfamiliarity with pharmacology, while Gilbert eagerly volunteers to accompany Salim. Salim, however, states that he has already tasked Valerie with arranging the carriage and that they should travel separately. Gilbert protests, declaring himself Salim's right arm, but Valerie calmly asserts that he will be the one to escort their master on this off-campus duty. His attendant's insistence brings a memory to the surface for Salim. He recalls walking with a large retinue in the past, and how it felt as though every one of them was glaring at him with suspicion or disdain. Gilbert acknowledges that while an escort is necessary for an heir, Salim was too heavily surrounded in the past. He explains that now, considering the burden on his attendants, Salim often tries to walk alone. Valerie finds this logic peculiar, remarking on the strangeness of an attendant not attended. Gilbert suggests that for other occasions, they should increase the number of people in their party. Valerie agrees, but Salim hesitates. He thinks to himself that arriving at a commoner's house with a large entourage would be a nuisance and cause trouble for them. As Salim remains lost in thought, Gilbert spots their transport and calls out to stop it. Valerie points towards the parking area, suggesting they make their way over. Outside the Grand First Magic Academy, Salim Bergman stands by a waiting carriage. He observes his attendants, Gilbert and Valerie, speaking with a young noblewoman. He reflects that in this world, students are expected to be able to protect themselves. While differences in status and ability are a fact of life, he believes it is wrong to unilaterally impose one's will on another, a line of thinking that connects to the very reason his country is on the verge of collapse. Suddenly, his attendants shove the young woman into the carriage as the driver urges them to hurry. Seeing this, Salim sprints towards them, demanding to know what they are doing. He realizes with cold certainty that they are attempting to flee. In response to their panicked escape, he calmly raises a hand. A massive wall of jagged ice erupts from the ground, instantly encasing the carriage and horses, halting them completely. Salim remarks that he appreciates their concern for his safety, but assures them that as long as there is magic to spare at the academy, they will not die. He adds that their opponent's system has a fatal flaw. As the ice shatters away, a stunned Valerie shouts Salim's name, questioning what just happened. Regaining his composure, he immediately orders someone to summon the academy staff to deal with the perpetrators. Ignoring his attendant, Salim turns his full attention to the young woman. He gently takes her hand, his expression softening as he asks if she is all right. She looks up at him, her eyes wide and welling with tears. She is visibly shaken, clutching his hand as she tries to compose herself. He recognizes her, then, as Laura Panetti and realizes she is unable to walk. Nearby, Gilbert flushes with embarrassment, realizing his plan to send Valerie to the staff room has failed. Gilbert rushes over, frantically trying to explain that he was only concerned for Salim's safety. Salim tells him to calm down, noting that Laura is too distressed to speak at the moment. As he contemplates what to do next, a man in a top hat runs towards them, calling out for his young mistress. He asks urgently if she is unharmed, then turns to Salim, apologizing for the intrusion and identifying himself as a member of the young woman's household. The man explains that the woman is Lady Laura, daughter of Viscount Panetti. He had been searching for her after she failed to appear at the pickup point, having left her carriage to look around. He finishes by remarking on the vastness of the Academy's parking area. As Salim Bergman watches with a cool gaze, Gilbert insists that he cannot simply leave Laura Panetti behind, vowing to escort her home himself. Salim utters his subordinate's name, his tone leaving no room for argument. It is a known fact that only high-ranking nobles may park their carriages at the Academy's entrance, a privilege not extended to quasi-barons, and Laura had been cornered in a less trafficked area by someone with ill intent. In response to the situation, the Panetti family steward directs his staff to contact Valerie at the pharmacist's and to guide Lady Laura. He explains that she was isolated and bullied at the Academy, lamenting that in their world, the weak are left without allies and become prey for the strong. Salim internally reflects on his motives. He admits he only intervened because he saw Gilbert, normally a troublemaker, acting with uncharacteristic concern for Laura. Recognizing his subordinate's feelings, he decided to follow, which led him to the scene. He recalls that in the future, Gilbert was a fine subordinate whose cheerful demeanor always helped his reputation. His thoughts are interrupted as Valerie approaches, reporting on the Panetti family. He explains they are a merchant house that purchased their quasi-baron title from the king and owned numerous stores. Salim hadn't known of them, as he'd never had dealings with the family. Valerie concludes that there must be some other circumstances at play. Processing this, Salim finds it unthinkable for a quasi-baron to enroll their daughter in an academy meant for the established nobility. He deems it a reckless move, as exposing a defenseless girl to a crowd of arrogant and violent nobles was nothing short of foolish. Indeed, Laura's mother weeps, lamenting that she never should have allowed her daughter to enroll in the first academy. Her husband tries to console her, explaining that he had asked the ladies-in-waiting of the Durrani Palace to look after Laura to prevent such an outcome. That request, however, was ignored. At the academy, Lady Gelsomina Durante refused to even acknowledge Laura, pointedly looking away. Because of this, Laura was left completely isolated. Salim recalls his own interaction with Lady Gelsomina. On the day of the entrance ceremony, she had asked him to act as an intermediary with the princess, citing that the Bergman family also served the palace. He knew then, from his future knowledge, that she possessed a two-faced nature. His expression darkens with this realization. He thinks of the hero, Leo, and concludes that the people surrounding Crown Princess Rafaela are an absolute mess. He considers the Crown Princess's plight. She should have been raised in the best possible environment, but the current king is intentionally fostering only her strength. The king believes that by the time she is 18, she will have no choice but to become a puppet for battle, a mere tool defined by her title. Within the Panetti household, Laura's mother pleads with her husband, her voice tight with worry. She insists they must have Laura withdraw from the academy, arguing that continuing on is far too dangerous and that it would be better for her to quit. Her husband remains grim, explaining that the right to enroll in the same year as the crown princess was a privilege coveted by all. He fears that if they relinquish such a precious position, they will surely earn the resentment of the other noble families. Elsewhere, Salim Bergman overhears the unfolding situation, his expression hardening. He recognizes it as a troublesome problem and resolves that he must first speak with his own faction. He gathers his allies, instructing them to keep an eye on Laura Panetti. Gilbert, ever eager, asks what he can do to help. Salim dismisses his enthusiasm, stating that while heartfelt, Gilbert would not be of much use in this particular matter. A memory surfaces in Salim's mind of how this problem played out before. His decision to protect Laura was not made lightly. It was based on his knowledge of the future. He knew that by publicly declaring himself her shield, the male students tormenting her would be forced to stop. He was the only one who could prevent the insidious bullying she faced. Salim's primary goal is to support Leo from the shadows, which requires him to gather talented individuals. This is a natural course of action for a noble. Laura, however, possesses no outstanding talents. She is merely a beautiful student of low standing. Why then would he go to such lengths for her? In his memory of the past, he recalls how others perceived his actions. Gelsomina Durrani gossiped with another student, confirming she was at the academy to find a high-status partner. Laura, unable to match Salim in status or ability, could never be his fiancée. His half-hearted sympathy had unintended consequences. The result was a torrent of dishonorable rumors. Unable to endure the slander, Laura was forced to withdraw from the academy. The Panetti family, having incurred the wrath of the nobility, faced ruin. Returning to the present, Salim recalls how Gilbert later investigated Laura's fate, discovering she and her family had moved to the countryside. The incident created a rift between them, souring his relationship with a subordinate who had once been so cheerful and direct. He realizes now how clumsy his past response was. To solve this problem correctly, he needs a female collaborator. He approaches Lieselot Belt, explaining that his faction is mostly male and he requires her perspective as a fellow second-year student. He asks for her opinion on how to handle the carefully orchestrated bullying against Laura. She gestures towards Gilbert Benson, who is loudly declaring that Laura is his woman and warning everyone to keep their hands off. Lieselot then turns to Salim, pointedly asking if this public spectacle is his idea of a solution. He calmly dismisses the notion, calling it a clumsy tactic. He explains that he has no personal interest in getting involved with Laura, as any careless remark from him would only ruin her life and intensify the bullying. Furthermore, he clarifies that as a candidate for sainthood bound by the seeker system, he is certainly not her lover. She seems to completely misinterpret his serious explanation, sighing dreamily. Her mind drifts to the plot of a popular novel, a handsome duke helping a damsel in distress, a love that transcends social status. She wonders aloud if she's stumbled into such a romantic tale. Her romantic fantasy intensifies, and she covers her blushing face with her hands. She exclaims that she's swooning and can't bear to hear such words coming from a duke. He observes her reaction, thinking to himself that the cool-headed woman he knows from the future shows no trace of this behavior. Recognizing that this is a serious, life-altering problem for Laura, he resolves that he must get Lieselot to focus on a real solution. To snap her out of her daze, he firmly grasps her by the shoulders. With an intense gaze, he urges her to think about the situation seriously. He leans in, acknowledging the uncomfortable proximity, but insisting that she listen. He apologizes for pressuring her, but explains that he needs her to help him devise a proper strategy, as he cannot move forward without one. She stammers his name, a blush spreading across her face as he pulls back, suddenly aware of how close he was. Composing herself, Lieselot asks for more details. She suggests that if the Duke is unwilling to act himself, there is a perfect female boss in his year who could handle it. He questions her about this female boss. Lieselot clarifies that she is referring to a woman in his grade with a commanding presence, Lady Nadia Louiver. His thoughts turn to Nadia Louiver. He considers that if he were to ask her for help directly, she would not refuse. He remembers her from the future as a great heroine who fought tirelessly against demons to save countless people. With this knowledge, he feels certain she would agree to help Laura. He explained to Lieselot that a cause of his past failures was taking on tasks he couldn't handle alone. Now, he understood there was another way. It might be better, he mused, to ask for help from someone who could succeed where he might not. Turning to his aide, he gave a direct order. Valerie, request a meeting with Lady Louiver for tomorrow after class. Valerie bowed his head in understanding and accepted the command. As the order was given, Lieselot's mind raced. She found Lady Louiver to be somewhat frightening and wasn't good at dealing with her. Despite her reservations, the matter was settled. A meeting with an important figure was now on the schedule. Noticing her contemplative expression, Salim simply stated the stakes. Well, he said, this is about saving someone. As night fell over the grand estate, he could only hope his plan would work. He wondered if they would be received poorly. The outcome of his meeting with the young lady remained uncertain. Inside a special salon at the academy, Salim Bergman and his companions, Gilbert, Valerie, Lieselot, and Laura Panetti, are seated for a formal meeting. They face a group of female students, tea served between them on a low table. The woman leading the opposing group, Nadia Louiver, introduces herself and her associates, Pamela Suddy and Julietta Janer. With a confident smile, she addresses Salim directly, asking him to state the purpose of their visit. He felt a sudden tension. He realized inwardly that the Louiver faction was composed mostly of women, giving the ornate room an atmosphere that he found unnerving. Sensing his hesitation, Lieselot spoke up, confirming that she had already taken the liberty of assessing the general situation on their behalf. She elaborated on her findings, explaining that Laura Panetti is currently isolated within the academy and in a dangerous position. Lieselot added that if she were to help Laura directly, she would surely face a dishonorable dismissal. He processed her words, asking if this was the reason they wished to borrow the power of the Louiver faction. Nadia smiled warmly, remarking that he was as kind as his reputation suggested, a comment that seemed to catch him off guard. Her smile was disarming, yet it troubled him. He reflected that every time they met, she praised him. According to the Pathfinder system, he knew he wasn't a good person, but she seemed determined to find some good in him, to elevate him. He thought back on their encounters and realized her praise was a way of respectfully keeping him at a distance. The realization settled in his mind. She was a frightening woman. Her perceptive gaze met his as she spoke, confirming his unspoken thoughts. She stated plainly that their business was, as she suspected, about Laura Panetti. Before the conversation could continue, the salon doors burst open. A student with glasses and braided hair rushed in, shouting that she had news for everyone from the previous night. She bursts into the room, breathlessly informing Julietta that Salim Bergman just saved Laura Panetti. The student explains that he drove off some male students who were harassing Laura, even using magic to do so. The news sends ripples of excitement through the group. One girl remarks that it's just like Salim to help a beautiful girl, while another adds that his good looks are matched by a good personality. Lieselot, however, quietly observes that this is all too similar to a popular legend. Following this outburst, Nadia Louiver remains silent, her expression unreadable. Lieselot begins to apologize for the interruption, but Nadia simply murmurs that she understands. She muses that it is just as Lieselot said, a faint, knowing smile playing on her lips. Her thoughts drift to a popular romance novel circulating throughout the capital, one depicting a love story between a nobleman and a commoner girl. She recalls that the nobleman in the story, who bears a striking resemblance to Salim, has become so popular that he is now the subject of whispered rumors among the common folk. She continues her internal monologue, acknowledging that while she knows she shouldn't get carried away, she can't help but feel she resembles the story's villainess, the rival for the protagonist's affection. This feeling is especially strong now that Salim has come to her with a request. As she stares into her teacup, she dismisses the thought. She is nothing like that character. In the future, she is destined to inherit her family's title. There is no reason she would ever become engaged to someone like the nobleman in that story. Her thoughts then turn to Leo, the commoner hero. She considers him a man of real ability, yet she finds it a nuisance that he tries to impose his insufficient power upon her. With a sharp internal critique, she labels him a rather sly fox. This internal assessment seems directed at Salim, who watches her with a tense expression. Nadia speaks, acknowledging that she knows he has a history of saving many commoners as the Marquis Louis Ver. However, she confesses that she finds his type, a good person, to be difficult to deal with. He replies coolly that he only dealt with the girl's situation because it happened right in front of him. Nadia smiles faintly, retorting that Leo has yet to be successfully recruited. If Salim is interested, she says, he is welcome to try and speak with him. Salim's mind flashes to a vision of the future, a memory from another life. He sees Leo, fiercely loyal, working together with Nadia to protect the people. He knows that if Nadia properly nurtures Leo's potential, he will grow into a powerful and steadfast ally. Returning to the present, his expression hardens with resolve. He understands. He will not leave a student in distress unattended. With determination, he declares that he will accept the responsibility of protecting Laura Panetti. He was stunned by her immediate agreement. Nadia Louisver leaned forward, a confident smile playing on her lips as she confirmed she was accepting his plea, but wondered if she might expect something in return. She then proposed that he shouldn't be so wary, suggesting they form a team for the monthly intra-academy competition. She playfully questioned if he was even capable of making up his mind. He considered her offer. The competition was always a stage for the noble houses to display their power. He realized, however, that if he and Nadia were to team up, their combined strength would be far too overwhelming. Her true ambitions then burst forth with fiery enthusiasm. She declared her intent to defeat the prideful royal family, crush the provincial nobles, and put the naive young ladies in their place, all while Princess Rafaela fumed in the background. This vision horrified him. He recoiled, remembering that with the Bergman dukedom and the Louisver marquisate already acting with near-total independence, such a public display of power would be seen as a direct challenge to the royal family. Despite his reservations, he composed himself. He admitted to himself that he, too, had a desire to humble the royalist faction. With newfound resolve, he agreed to cooperate with her. Their alliance was sealed. Nadia declared that they were now comrades and insisted he call her by her first name. He agreed, formally accepting her offer and asking that she call him Salim in return. As they settled the terms, other members of Nadia's faction approached. A cheerful Pamela Suddy and a more reserved Julietta Janer announced that they, too, would be joining the team. Pamela greeted him with bright energy, while Julietta offered a more formal, yet polite, introduction, both addressing him by his newly permitted first name. He acknowledged their greetings, internally noting that this was the first time he had ever been on a first-name basis with girls from other noble houses. Turning to the assembled group, he asked if there was anything else. He observes his new teammates as they converse amongst themselves. Pamela Suddy offers an apology to Nadia Louisver, who remarks that Salim doesn't seem to laugh much. Another student, Julietta Janer, suggests that since his retinue is mostly male, he may have simply forgotten the proper etiquette for interacting with women. This observation prompts an internal reflection. He acknowledges that while he was taught social etiquette befitting the son of a duke, he has little practical experience interacting with other students. He contrasts this with how he behaves around Leo, realizing it's a matter of conscious effort. With a quiet apology, he resolves to properly engage with them. Turning to the group, he places a hand over his heart in a formal gesture. He expresses his hope that they will all work well together from now on. The sudden, courtly display catches Nadia's entire faction off guard. The young women blush, their hands flying to their faces in a collective, flustered gasp. Their reaction puzzles him for a moment. He processes their admiration, a small smile playing on his lips as he realizes the effect he's had. The feeling, he decides, is not unpleasant. This fleeting moment of satisfaction is shattered by an internal jolt. An unseen system informs him that he has had a wicked thought, resulting in a loss of 10 experience points. The notification leaves him stunned. His shock quickly turns to outrage. He silently screams in frustration, questioning why such a harmless thought would warrant a penalty. Later, while seated with his own companions, his frustration continues to simmer. He internally curses the unreasonable system, tempted to indulge his thoughts since he's being punished anyway. He immediately catches himself, realizing that even thinking about it could cost him more experience points. His silent turmoil does not go unnoticed. As they leave, Gilbert Benson remarks on Salim's unusual quietness and brooding mood, feeling exhausted by it. Valerie Meldars concurs, adding that Salim's speech was curt, and speculates that Lady Nadia Louisver must be quite perceptive to have seen something of value in it. Salim then turns his attention to Laura Panetti, who has remained behind. He gently asks if she was frightened by his mood. Startled, she looks up at him, her cheeks flushed as she denies it, though her expression betrays her unease. Meanwhile, Salim's companions discuss their own affairs. Gilbert asked Nadia how her preparations for the upcoming mock battle were progressing. She assured him it was fine, turning the question back to him and Valerie. Valerie stated coolly that they weren't leaking information to other houses, unlike some people. Gilbert simply laughed, agreeing that they should all just do their best. Elsewhere in the academy grounds, Laura Panetti was approached by her friends, who called out her name with cheerful smiles. They expressed their relief, telling her how cute she was and how glad they were that she seemed to be making friends properly. They were also pleased that the misunderstanding caused by those meddlesome individuals had finally been resolved. Their conversation was abruptly interrupted when Salim appeared, taking Laura's hand and causing her to drop a handkerchief. From a distance, his companions reacted with outrage. Nadia demanded to know what he was doing, while Gilbert accused him of dropping it on purpose. Valerie furiously declared that getting so close to Laura was unforgivable. He ignored their glares, smirking as he looked down at the surprised Laura, murmuring that someone had appeared again. Then, just as quickly, he turned and walked away, leaving Laura blushing and flustered amongst her friends. His companions watched the scene unfold with disbelief. Gilbert grumbled about why Salim was so fixated on Laura. Nadia admitted she couldn't stand up to Salim, clarifying that it wasn't due to any feelings for him. Valerie simply stated that the difference between them and Salim was vast. Gilbert pressed Valerie for an explanation, questioning why Salim would go out of his way to approach Laura. He reasoned that Salim's forwardness gave Laura no reason to feel insecure, and wondered aloud if Salim was being deeply considerate in some way. While they debated, Laura's friends had already reached their own conclusion. They saw Salim's actions, helping a beautiful girl and forcing another house to apologize without any apparent benefit to himself, as a pure act of philanthropy. This selfless display, they realized, was why the majority of the female students at the academy had become his staunch supporters. Valerie, however, offered a more complex explanation. He reminded them that the Duke was ambitious and the Crown Prince was wary of him, so Salim couldn't afford to stand out. By quietly supporting Leo, he was gathering strength and information. His recent behavior, making him look like a fool in love, was a trap to lower the Duke's guard. Gilbert was stunned, but Valerie confessed that Salim had been so flustered lately that he'd been scolded by their master, making Valerie wonder if there was another reason for his behavior. He remembers a time from his youth, during a visit to Bergman Castle. Duke Bergman had been praising Gilbert, the son of Viscount Belson, for his promising swordsmanship. The young Gilbert was ecstatic at the compliment. The Duke then turned to his own son, urging Salim to also apply himself. The young Salim responded with a bright, cheerful thank you, but Valerie recalls seeing something in the boy's eyes that day, a look he found deeply unsettling. But even then, before their reunion at the academy, he understood Salim's nature. Salim was always one to push his subordinates into the spotlight, allowing them to shine while he himself remained withdrawn, directing from the shadows. And in doing so, he is guiding them. Valerie comes to a firm conclusion. Their general is truly formidable. With a mock battle approaching, he steels his resolve, determined that they must fight their hardest. A new future is taking shape. Before the Grand Academy building, the mock battle is declared open. Filled with excitement, Gilbert shouts encouragement to his leader, exclaiming, "Let's do this, Master Salim." Nearby, Nadia Louisver turns to her teammates, Pamela and Julieta, with a confident smirk. She notes that they are also participating, intending to cooperate as allies, and declares her intention to show the regional nobles the true strength of their faction. Hearing this bold declaration, Gilbert is momentarily taken aback, managing only a flustered, Salim, however, watches Nadia with a cool gaze. He internally reflects on the 6-on-6 battle they've entered, acknowledging that Nadia is as formidable as ever and not someone he would wish to make an enemy of. He muses that she is a good person at heart and should have reliable allies. His team, representing the Bergman house, is composed of himself, Gilbert, and Lieselot. Allied with them are the members of the Louisver house team, Nadia, Pamela, and Julieta. Meanwhile, observing from afar, the hero Leo reflects on his situation. Though he is currently training with the Bergman household, he is not yet an official member and thus cannot join the team. He resolves to watch for now to see how they grow. Back with the team, Nadia outlines their strategy. She explains that while destroying the enemy's objective wins the match, defending their own is equally important. She proposes a simple plan. The entire team will attack, leaving Salim as the sole defender. Holding up a small, gem-like object, she asks if he can handle it. As the match begins, Nadia confidently declares that Salim should leave the defense to her, quickly clarifying that she'll use a decoy spell to protect their objective. With a determined grin, she rallies the others, shouting for them to attack as she, Gilbert, Pamela, and Julieta charge forward. Their charge is immediately met with resistance as an opponent's blade clashes against Gilbert's. Startled, he is warned by his attacker, Valerie, to be careful. Watching from the defensive line, Salim recognizes his former colleague, questioning if Valerie truly believes his team of first years can stand against them. The clash intensifies across the field. Valerie retorts that his team is quite famous. As the battle rages, Salim realizes with dawning horror that they are facing the perennial champions. He grits his teeth in frustration, wondering how they ended up in this situation. He stands firm within a shimmering, intricate barrier, declaring that it will not yield. As the enemy assault begins, one of his teammates calls for reinforcements. Gilbert, meanwhile, shouts in frustration, demanding that someone hurry back to their position. Lieselot and Pamela watch with tense expressions, bracing for the impact. The barrier shatters into countless fragments under the relentless assault. On the other side, Nadia Louiver of the opposing team smirks with condescending amusement. She mocks their defensive strategy, questioning if they truly believe they could protect their vanguard with such a meager effort and accusing them of gross underestimation. Watching from the stands, other students are stunned by the power on display. One questions how the attackers could possibly be first-year students, while another remarks that they were unaware of anyone possessing such formidable barrier magic. Valerie, however, remains composed, recognizing the true strength of the spell and identifying its origin. It is unmistakably the power of the Bergman House. With the second and third rounds of the tournament concluded, Nadia Louiver strides confidently forward with her teammates. She announces with a smile that their next match is the semifinals. Watching them depart, Salim Bergman reflects on their strategy of forcing the team leader to act as a defender. He notes that it has been working well for them, and decides it is time to implement his own plan. As they watch, Lieselot Belt approaches, remarking to Nadia that it's quite special for the Queen's classmates to be in the semifinals. She adds that 3 of the 4 remaining teams are led by first-year students, a fact that seems to surprise Nadia. Her foot taps impatiently on the ground. Nadia states that she has already had the opportunity to witness the true abilities of the first years. The conversation is cut short by the boisterous arrival of Mark Sarmiento. He addresses Salim directly, mocking his charitable activities and noting his reputation for defense. With a wide grin, Mark declares how much he is looking forward to facing him in the semifinals. With the semifinal match underway, Mark laughs derisively, calling Salim's team a flashy decoy. He roars for Salim to prepare himself, then commands his own 5-person team to attack all at once. As the opposing team charges, Salim realizes that while his initial strategy to mislead them was effective, his true intentions have now been exposed. The 5 attackers unleash a coordinated magical assault. Mark laughs maniacally, mocking the 5-against-1 odds as Salim is enveloped by a glowing magic circle on the ground. But Salim calmly raises a hand, erecting a powerful barrier that effortlessly repels the onslaught. He orders the attackers to get out of his barrier's range. Internally, he reflects that this is not a simple magic lesson. In a contest of swordsmanship and physical reinforcement, he is certain to win, thanks to the advantage of his memories and past experience. His words strike Mark, who grits his teeth in frustration. Salim continues coolly, stating that as a noble, he has no intention of losing to an opponent he knows he can defeat. He tells Mark that he will have to try again. As his defeated opponents lay on the ground, Nadia Louiver observes the scene. She remarks that it was utterly foolish for Salim to defend alone against that strategy, but if he intends to win with his sword, he should prove it. With a dismissive wave, she offers a sarcastic congratulations to Mark's team for making it to the semifinals. Her attention then shifts to the next stage. With a confident smile, she declares that the final match is about to begin as the crowd roars with anticipation. On the arena floor, the opposing team stands ready. Crown Princess Rafaela, flanked by her teammates, steps forward and boldly announces that they will do it. She draws her rapier, its point aimed forward. From the sidelines, Nadia and Lieselot watch her arrival. Nadia notes that they will be facing the Crown Princess's team in the final match, and that Salim will have to continue his defense. An official voice then announces the start of the final match. The moment the declaration is made, the princess explodes into motion, lunging forward to close the distance in an instant. Her rapier strikes true, but it halts just before Salim's face, stopped by an invisible force. He has caught the blade's tip between his fingers as a shimmering magical barrier flares to life around him. Unfazed, he comments on her impressive speed. Meanwhile, Mark Sarmiento watches from the sidelines, analyzing the unfolding battle. He observes that the other members of Salim's team are dedicated to defense, a strategy completely opposite to the all-out attack his own team employed. The clash is a stalemate, a true one-on-one battle between the princess's offense and Salim's defense. Rafaela acknowledges that while he defeated her with a sword in their last encounter, his true specialty is clearly this powerful barrier match. She finds the situation unexpectedly amusing. To be able to face an opponent whose expression remains unchanged is interesting, she thinks to herself, realizing that the Crown Princess is quite the battle enthusiast. Salim, in turn, seems slightly taken aback by her reaction. Her amusement solidifies into fierce determination. She admits that underestimating him was a mistake and that this response is what she expected. With a powerful surge, she declares that she will now come at him with her full strength. She unleashes a maelstrom of magical energy, a furious, swirling vortex aimed directly at Salim. He observes the sheer force of the attack, acknowledging that her raw combat power at this moment surpasses his own. Yet, he possesses the experience of having faced such overwhelming odds before and calmly assesses her as truly formidable. Despite her power, he remains certain he will not lose this contest. His purpose is not to defeat her, but to hold her off, buying time for Nadia and the others to break through the opponent's defenses. He resolves to simply endure, conserving his magical energy by precisely matching his barrier's strength to her relentless assault. The furious exchange ends, leaving her looking at him with surprise. She admits that she had heard rumors of him being a weakling who relied on others, but concedes that he is quite strong. He smiles and thanks her for the compliment, though he adds that strength is his only real asset. He then gently admonishes her to be more aware of her surroundings, pointing out that some of her own teammates are in tears. She questions his meaning, confused. He explains that her immense combat power is incongruous for a young princess, noting that it's a sentiment Nadia has expressed as well. As his words sink in, a look of understanding crosses her face. In the arena below, her teammates erupt in cheers, celebrating their victory. The match had concluded while her attention was entirely fixed on him. Moments later, Nadia Louisver triumphantly hoists the championship trophy, declaring the victory of the combined Louisver and Bergman team. From his seat, Salim watches the celebration, reflecting that his initial concerns about causing trouble by joining House Louisver were unfounded. The tournament had concluded smoothly. Beside him, Lieselot Belt chuckles softly. She asks for his thoughts, and he confirms that while there was no trouble, the experience was indeed quite interesting. Elsewhere, Gelsamina Durrani approaches Nadia Louisver. She comments on the recent final, observing that Nadia seemed preoccupied with the Duke's son during her bout with the princess. Gelsamina then asks why Nadia is behaving as if she is in the middle of a match, introducing herself formally as Gelsamina Durrani and declaring, "This is a match." Without warning, she lunges forward, striking Nadia with a vicious blow that sends her reeling backward. Gelsamina explains her actions, stating that since Nadia had sent that disgusting woman flying with a punch, she was simply repaying the favor. Back with Salim, Lieselot beams with delight, exclaiming how satisfying that sight was. She turns to him, saying she wanted to make sure he saw it as well. He, however, appears taken aback by the sudden violence, managing only a quiet, uncertain response. Salim groans internally, completely lost. He wonders how he should react to the situation. He had tried to be gentlemanly in front of the women, but he realizes a true gentlewoman wouldn't engage in such a conversation. He feels that the discussion about Gelsamina and Laura was inappropriate. As he grapples with these thoughts, he and his companions turn and walk away, leaving Gelsamina standing alone under the archway. Before they get far, Lieselot turns back to Gelsamina with a sly smile. She declares that she will praise Nadia herself, without any unnecessary embellishments. She adds that it was a shame she couldn't see Nadia's face during the incident, but watching Salim so devotedly protect her was quite the spectacle. Her attention then shifts to Princess Rafaela. Gelsamina states that thanks to the Crown Prince's influence, she was able to come to the Royal Capital's Academy, and must therefore study hard. Overhearing this, a bewildered Salim can only stammer about how amazing Nadia is, clearly missing the political undertones of the exchange. The princess remains silent, her expression hardening with resolve as she takes in Gelsamina's words. Behind her, Salim and the others watch on, unaware of the tensions simmering beneath the surface. Her point made, Gelsamina approaches Salim directly, her voice low and steady. She promises him that this humiliation will, one day, be returned. The attendant to the strongest princess has made her intentions clear. Within the academy, Lieselot Belt and her companions discuss the recent mock battle. Lieselot remarks that Salim's magic barrier was formidable, finding it strange he would use it for that particular princess. She muses that while Salim was known for his support and recovery magic, she now questions his true capabilities in combat. Nearby, Mark Sarmiento reflects on the events. He concedes that Nadia was right to be wary of Salim, admitting to himself that he took a great risk in trusting her protection to him. He also recalls how Pamela used his own obstruction magic during the semifinals, acknowledging the impressive power of Nadia's magic. Gelsamina Durrani observes from her seat, a knowing look on her face. She thinks to herself that, just as she'd observed, her own obstruction magic was ultimately unnecessary. She recalls a key fact. Salim Bergman, the eldest son of the Duke, had only hastily learned recovery magic just before enrolling in the academy. She continues her assessment, speaking with Nadia. Gelsamina finds it surprising that Salim suddenly acquired the ability to use recovery magic, an art few can master. Furthermore, she notes that according to church reports, Salim doesn't belong to any parish and has been treating commoners for free, which has made him a nuisance to the church, a group from whom she prefers to keep her distance. Crown Princess Rafaela elaborates on the political complexities. She explains that the Louisver territory, situated in the Western Mountains, trades with the dwarves and thus has many church-related dealings. However, the Louisver family itself makes a point not to get involved with the church's internal affairs, having expended great effort to maintain this separation. Therefore, she concludes if Salim were to officially join the church, it would create a significant problem for the Louisver domain. Later, Gelsamina instructs Pamela to continue monitoring Salim's activities. Pamela agrees readily, adding with a smile that even without being told, she intends to keep a close watch on him. As Julieta joins them, Pamela voices a perplexing thought. She mentions that she has met Duke Bergman's son before, but she has no memory of him being so handsome, a strange discrepancy she can't quite place. Her confusion stems from a memory of a haughty, unpleasant trio of nobles, Salim, Valerie, and Gilbert, who always seem to be asserting their superiority. The image of that Salim is jarringly different from the one they know now. Gelsomina agrees, noting his appearance is completely different. She recalls his past self as having a grim face, as if carrying a heavy burden, but now he possesses a radiant quality. This change, she admits, makes the rumors of him treating the sick for free seem believable. Despite the stark difference, Pamela is completely captivated by the new Salim. She gushes about how he helps bullied female students and even lends a hand to Nadia. She recalls his impressive but not overbearing performance in the mock battle and how refreshingly he speaks to Nadia, concluding that he's simply wonderful. Gelsomina, however, cuts through their infatuation. She warns them not to be so easily swayed, pointing out the possibility that he is merely putting on an act. Flustered, Julieta declares that they must build up a resistance to handsome men, much to Gelsomina's exasperation. She blushes, flustered by her friend's suggestions. They tease her about getting closer to Salim Bergman, even proposing she invite him to a tea party. She vehemently refuses, unable to fathom what he could possibly be plotting. Her mind races, trying to reconcile his dazzling public persona with the reports she has read. While his demeanor doesn't seem malicious, she questions his true intentions. The documents detailed his use of rare recovery and enchantment magic, his aid to commoners, and his development of magical tools whose designs he released for free. Before arriving at the academy, the Bergman heir was apparently confronting the church to win public favor. She senses a discrepancy, feeling that the man she's met doesn't quite align with the data. Gazing out the window, she makes a decision. Hearing that Salim is conducting charitable activities in the capital, she resolves to go on the next holiday and see his actions for herself. Later, she stands with her friends. Lieselot announces she will also go investigate Salim's movements. Nadia expresses a desire to join, but explains she must first reply to a letter from her mother. Nearby, Gelsomina speaks with her own mother, who asks if she is well. Gelsomina reassures her, and her mother reminds her to study diligently to be a proper support. Her investigation leads her to a poor district in the capital. There, amidst the dilapidated buildings, she spots him. She is not alone. Her friends are with her. They remark on the keen perception of Salim's escort and decide to keep their distance while following. To remain unseen, Gelsomina begins casting an obstruction spell. In a ruined courtyard, Salim stands at the center of a vast, glowing magical circle, his hand raised as he channels immense power. The energy surges outward, mending the cracked and crumbling walls of the surrounding buildings. Gelsomina watches in awe, recognizing it as earth magic executed with incredible control. She reflects that his skills with recovery, enchantment, and barrier magic were already impressive, but this confirms his overall magical technique is on an entirely different level. He moves from one building to the next, repairing homes and accepting only the words of thanks from the grateful residents. Gelsomina continues to watch, her expression unreadable. Suddenly, he turns, his gaze locking directly onto her hiding spot. He compliments the impressive guard of a ducal house, asking Gelsomina if she managed to see through his own obstruction magic. He then turns his attention to Nadia, asking if she is enjoying her tour of the capital's downtown. He greets them with a disarming smile, suggesting they treat this as a chance encounter since he's quite familiar with the area. Gelsomina cautiously agrees. With the matter settled, Salim instructs his guards to stand down, thanking her for her understanding. He then turns to Nadia, noting that with her at his side, Gelsomina might feel more at ease. He muses that Gelsomina is quite persistent and likely won't warm up to him easily, before suggesting they visit a nearby open-air market. He leads her through the bustling market, explaining it's a place even nobles rarely frequent, full of interesting wares. They stop at a stall selling carved wooden dolls, where an elderly shopkeeper prices one at a single silver coin. From a distance, Gelsomina watches the scene unfold, a look of surprise on her face. Meanwhile, the shopkeeper happily takes their money as Salim and Nadia enjoy some local treats. The pleasant moment is broken when Nadia confronts the shopkeeper, declaring he's made a mistake. She points out that the coin she received is not the silver coin she gave him, but one worth 10 times its value. The man scoffs, telling her that someone from a noble family should know better. He insists the coin is correct, dismissing her concern as something a child wouldn't understand. Nadia is taken aback, while Gelsomina, still watching, seethes at the man's audacity. He continues to berate them, questioning if Salim carved the wooden doll himself and boasting of his own superior skill. As he speaks, he physically pushes them back from his stall. Salim calmly intervenes, offering to pay with a silver coin from his own purse. He tells Nadia to let the matter go if he is satisfied. He then casually observes that the shopkeeper seems to have a bad back, likely from overworking with heavy wood. As he speaks, a soft light emanates from his hand. The shopkeeper suddenly cries out, grabbing his lower back in astonishment as the chronic pain vanishes. Salim simply smiles, mentioning he knows a bit about healing and encourages the man to continue making fine products. The shopkeeper can only stare, dumbfounded. Walking away from the stall, Nadia turns to Salim with a serious expression. She asks if he just used recovery magic, and for free, no less. She then presses him, wanting to know what he received from the shopkeeper in return. He continued their walk, seemingly moving on from her pointed question. He mentioned that if she liked the bracelet from the shop they passed, he would get it for her as a bonus. Then, he gestured towards another item, asking Nadia if she liked it. Before she could respond, she felt the cool touch of a chain as he fastened a necklace around her neck. "What?" she murmured, surprised by the sudden gesture. He stepped back slightly, a gentle smile on his face. "Ah, yes, it's beautiful," he commented, his gaze fixed on the pendant now resting against her skin. She gasped, completely flustered. "Wh?" she stammered, looking down at the object. "It's a lovely pendant," he explained his choice, noting the delicate wood carving that brought the floral ornament to life. The design, he remarked, with a motif of natural materials and vitality that perfectly suited her own healthy beauty. Her face flushed at the compliment. This was it. She realized a sophisticated technique. He was praising the item to indirectly praise her, a high-level social maneuver designed to disarm her. This man, she thought with a mix of alarm and fascination, was dangerous. He, however, seemed lost in his own thoughts about the pendant. He mused that while the shopkeeper was skilled, the humble materials used meant it wasn't something a noble would typically buy. He concluded that one shouldn't judge an item's value so easily. His expression suddenly brightened into a wide, genuine smile. "Today was great," he exclaimed. "I never thought I'd be walking around town with a girl like this." Nadia, meanwhile, felt herself blushing again, thinking she was falling for his strategy far too easily. He then touched his chin, a bashful look crossing his face. "Ah, but I have no experience with this sort of thing," he admitted, looking away. "It's embarrassing." Her mind reeled. Was this man natural or calculating? She couldn't tell. If this was an act, he was a master of manipulation. If it was genuine, he was systematically wearing down her defenses. She clenched her fist, realizing with dread that this type of person was the most difficult of all to handle. She watches as Salim suggests they should head back, his tone casual as the evening draws in. His calm demeanor belies the storm of thoughts within her. This feeling he gives her is not something she would associate with a person who is merely proper. She struggles to reconcile the young man before her with the unpleasant child she once knew. How could he have changed so drastically? Yet, she is certain that the person standing here now is not driven by ambition or some hidden agenda. Today, more than ever, she is utterly convinced of his sincerity as he continues his journey, growing into a saint. By Salim's bedside, Gelsamina apologizes for troubling him with heat stroke, but he reassures her, saying he can't use his body enhancement well. He tells her not to worry and to let him handle it. Internally, he notes the surprisingly high magic levels of the mansion's servants, a fact that concerns him, though he believes his own self-recovery will eventually catch up. He reflects that it has been 2 months since his arrival in the capital, and his level has been slowly rising. A prompt appears before him, offering to use physical support to aid his recovery. He accepts. The system confirms the action, granting him experience points that, combined with a quest completion bonus, suddenly push him to level 40. He marvels at the tenfold increase from his previous level. A notification announces a new skill has been acquired, regenerative healing. He eagerly wonders what kind of ability it is. His excitement turns to stunned silence as the skill's description materializes. It can heal any and all physical damage. He realizes this new power is on a completely different level than his previous healing, which was only effective on minor wounds. Unlike his body enhancement, which was useless against the weak, this new skill could be a true game changer. Sometime later, Salim stands on a balcony. Valerie approaches, addressing him as young master, while Lieselot stands nearby, looking out over the railing. He informs Valerie that he can now heal almost any injury. Valerie expresses his surprise, noting that while Salim's previous healing magic was useful, it was incapable of treating major wounds, even when combined with his body enhancement. Salim clarifies that it is not he who uses healing magic, but a system that performs it automatically, merely giving him the false impression that he is the one casting. He tells Valerie to be mindful of this distinction, as he needs him to find and train people who possess true healing abilities. Understanding the implications, Valerie immediately agrees to arrange it and rushes off to report to Duke Bergman. As he departs, Salim turns and calls out, "Wait, Lieselot." She turns from the railing, her expression one of mild surprise, questioning why he has called her name. She turned her attention to Salim and Valerie, asking how things went. Valerie explained that a precious carrier pigeon had just departed, prompting Lieselot to confirm she had also sent a report to her own territory before offering one of her own birds for their use. In response to her offer, Valerie knelt, stating he would prepare a report immediately. Lieselot waved off his formality, explaining that it was her private carrier pigeon and her duty was already fulfilled, assuring him there was no need for concern, especially regarding the Belt family's information network. Her tone then shifted to one of playful affection as she gazed at Salim. She confided that the letter was for her sisters, admitting it was fun to tease them with tales of the prince's dreamlike life. With a wink, she promised to play with him again later, much to his apparent discomfort. A moment later, one of the birds fluttered from its cage and landed gently on his outstretched hand. Lieselot marveled that even animals were drawn to the young prince. He, however, was perplexed. He recalled animals always avoiding him in the past and wondered if his very presence had somehow changed. As the bird took flight again, Lieselot remarked with a smile that it seemed to like him more than her, its own tamer. He watched it go, a quiet sense of satisfaction washing over him. Being liked by an animal was a pleasant feeling. Later, inside a formal chamber, a nobleman with his arm held in a sling was brought before them. The man, his face etched with pain, looked toward Salim, acknowledging the prince's presence and his own dire need for aid. Without hesitation, Salim declared that he would provide the healing. He placed his hands over the man's grievously injured arm, and a brilliant light enveloped the limb. A surge of power flowed through him as he performed regenerative healing, gaining 1,000 experience points and leveling up to 41. The light faded, revealing a perfectly restored arm. The nobleman stared, utterly speechless at the impossible recovery. Beside them, Valerie trembled with excitement, declaring that no other healing mage in the entire country possessed such power. He rushed to Salim's side, gripping his shoulders with unrestrained joy and praising him for his incredible feat. The effort, however, had taken its toll. Salim's eyes closed as he began to sway from exhaustion. Later, resting in his bed, he reflected on the immense power of his new skill. The regenerative healing was truly in a class of its own, but the cost in magical energy was equally staggering. He realized with a sigh that, for now, he was limited to healing just one person per day. He realized the nature of his regenerative healing skill. Once activated, it would relentlessly drain his magical power until the target was fully restored. Using it so recklessly would leave him completely vulnerable. To overcome this limitation and reduce the immense magical cost, he understood that he would need to increase his proficiency with the healing skill itself. Without doing so, he would be unable to help any more people than he already had. Inside an office, Valerie considered the situation. He acknowledged Salim's desire to heal many people as quickly as possible, but cautioned that this new ability was far too potent and profound to be used carelessly. He proposed a plan. They would wait for the upcoming month-long vacation to begin treating the injured. He elaborated on his reasoning, expressing concern that if news of a cure for the incurable were to spread, it would cause widespread panic. For the time being, he insisted that knowledge of Salim's ability must be restricted to a select few within the ducal house. The plan was for Salim to tour their domain during the summer vacation and treat as many people as possible. Salim listened intently, understanding Valerie's logic. However, he found the plan difficult to accept at the moment, as he had something important he needed to accomplish before the summer break began. He voiced his thoughts to Valerie, explaining his desire to master this new power as quickly as possible. He requested that Valerie bring him patients, even just a few at a time, so that he could practice and grow accustomed to the skill. Valerie seemed to grasp his intention. He formally agreed to the plan, thanking Valerie for making the arrangements. A grim memory from his past life surfaced. A major incident was set to occur just before the summer vacation, one that would greatly expand the influence of the demons. He was determined to mitigate the damage from that coming event as much as he could. As the summer vacation drew near, Salim was walking through a corridor when Pamela Suddy called out his name. He turned to face her, his expression looking unusually pale, and asked if something was the matter. Her expression was filled with distress and resignation. She knew the time had finally come. She explained to Salim and Juliet Janer that she had to take a leave of absence to return home. A grave situation had unfolded in her family's domain, the Suddy barony. A severe demonic beast outbreak had occurred. With a heavy heart, she revealed that her mother had been grievously injured in the attack. Her face streaked with tears, but her jaw set with resolve. She declares that she will stand at the forefront of the demonic beast's subjugation. She warns that even her own mother could not defeat the creature, emphasizing its extreme danger. In response, Salim, his arms crossed, insists to Lieselot that he will go with them, even if it means borrowing the power of the Louisver family. He clarifies the connection. Pamela's mother is Baron Louver's sister, making Pamela and Nadia cousins. Pamela elaborates on the complex situation. She explains that while the Suddy family is heavily influenced by the Louisver barony, there are underlying issues between the two houses. Though she cares for Nadia and the Baron, she feels a profound duty to defeat the beast herself for the honor of her family and the independence of her territory. Lieselot provides context for Pamela's resolve, explaining that for a noble house of baronial rank or higher to rule independently, they must protect their people from demonic beasts and ensure their domain's prosperity. For the Suddy barony to maintain its standing, they must succeed alone. He considers the weight of their pride, realizing that clinging to appearances could invite an even worse disaster. Turning to Pamela, he proposes an alternative. If she will not borrow the Louisver family's power, then she should take him. His healing ability, he suggests, could be instrumental in the Baroness's recovery. He winks, a confident plan forming. He points out that borrowing the power of a ducal house would reflect poorly on the Louisver family. Instead, he will go secretly to help a friend, disguised as a commoner, a role he claims to be quite skilled at playing. Lieselot observes that his appearance is a bit too striking for a commoner, but concedes it might work if he dresses down. She notes his familiarity with commoner culture, adding that he is currently treating the king's illness in the capital. Julieta chimes in, confirming she has been investigating his activities thoroughly. As Pamela begins to protest, Lieselot interjects firmly, reminding her that if she were to fall, the Suddy barony would be lost. Salim reinforces the point, urging her to accept his offer of help. Her resistance crumbles, replaced by relief. She thanks Salim and apologizes for the trouble, and he confidently tells her to leave it to him. A chilling memory surfaces. In her previous life, she had returned home for this very incident, and it had led to her death. The memory is vivid and dark. To prevent that tragic future from repeating, a future where the Sooty Barony's fall brings ruin to the Louisver family as well. She knows she must confront this demonic threat. She will need Nadia's strength. Therefore, any obstacle that could harm the Louisver family must be eliminated. Outside the academy walls, Salim Bergman approached Leo with a serious expression, stating that he had a favor to ask. Leo, caught off guard, could only repeat the word back as a question. He elaborated on his request, explaining that he wanted to go to a friend's home to participate in a demonic beast hunt. Despite knowing Leo was in the middle of training, Salim asked him to come along. The request left Leo bewildered. He questioned why the son of a great noble would ask anything of a commoner like himself. Salim clarified the situation. His friends were also nobles, and to avoid political complications, he wanted Leo to come along while pretending to be a commoner. He then admitted his true reason. He wanted to borrow Leo's power. Salim expressed his firm belief that with the future hero at his side, they could defeat any demonic beast that appeared. He simply wanted to help. Upon hearing this, Leo recalled Salim's own unique abilities and understood his reasoning, agreeing to the plan. With the party assembled, the wheels of a carriage began to turn, rattling down the road as they set off for the demonic beast hunt. At the academy, Katia presents herself in a unique uniform, distinct from the standard student attire. She asks if it looks strange, but Valerie assures her it suits her well. Katia explains that for the upcoming event, she will be participating as a regular student. Seated before her, Salim, Valerie, and Leo listen as she asks them to look after her. As they prepared, Leo's mind drifted back to a recent memory. A commoner like him had been given a single, significant request. He recalled being approached by Lady Nadia Louisver at the Bergman estate. She had inquired about the rumors that the Bergman family's attempts to recruit him had failed, questioning if he was truly as strong as people said. She then extended an invitation for him to come to the Louisver estate. He had firmly rejected her offer, stating he had no intention of leaving the capital as his work was in the provinces. Nadia countered with a smile, suggesting that if terms were the issue, she could negotiate a better deal. She boasted that the Louisver estate was prosperous, allowing him to travel to the capital for work periodically while his skills developed. Yet, Leo remained resolute, declaring his debt to Salim prevented him from serving any other noble house. His refusal prompted her to comment on his unreasonable loyalty, wondering aloud if Salim was holding him back. Leo clarified his position. He was neither a noble nor a retainer, but simply wished to work alongside them in the city. He then asked if she was a noble herself. As this exchange unfolded, Salim, who had been sitting nearby, grew concerned, realizing that if this continued, Leo would surely be scouted away from him. This very recruitment attempt had not gone unnoticed by Salim, who later confronted Leo, asking if he was going to lose him. He recalled Leo once saying he couldn't win against him in a match, yet Salim knew Leo was abnormally strong for a commoner. He remembered being told how Leo freely treated the sick and repaired homes, acting like a saint. A painful realization dawned on him. He couldn't possibly tie such a person down. Leo, sensing his friend's turmoil, offered him an apple. He expressed his gratitude for Salim's earnest offer to serve him, admitting that while he was happy, it wasn't a realistic path. He apologized, downplaying his own abilities by saying his magic was just a combat specialty and not something extraordinary. He then revealed the true source of his loyalty. Salim had saved his life when he was near death from poisoning after eating a demonic beast. Salim reflected on this, acknowledging that Leo's special power had been instrumental in protecting him and had been a great help to them all. He realized that Leo was already more than strong enough on his own and didn't truly need him. Accepting his friend's decision, Salim told him to take his time and decide his path by graduation. With the matter settled, the group set out. The Sooty Marquis was located to the east of the Louisver territory and north of the capital, a journey that would take a full day by carriage. Their arrival at the Sooty Marquis was met with an unexpected reception. A young man named Frederick greeted Pamela Sooty, asking who she had brought with her. Before she could answer, he explained that they were friends from the capital's academy, commoners with excellent magical abilities who had been recommended. He announced that since their affiliation was still unofficial, he had decided to secure their cooperation himself. Pamela was taken aback by his resourcefulness. His confident declaration left Pamela reeling. She looked towards Salim's approaching group, a sense of dread washing over her. The situation was far more complicated than she had anticipated. She tried to tell Valerie to hold back, but he apologized, seemingly unaware of the underlying tension. Pamela realized with a sinking feeling that her mother and her brother, Frederick, had very different intentions. Her family's history was a complicated one. The Sooty Marquis had been founded by a peer from a house of equivalent rank. Their power was just barely enough to sustain their territory, a burden passed down from the first Marquis and his wife. 17 years ago, however, tragedy struck when a plague claimed the lives of his wife and both of his parents, leaving him to grieve with his two young children. With the Sooty house lacking the power to maintain the territory alone, the Louisver house extended a helping hand. Pamela's grandfather, the Marquis at the time, had given his own daughter to the head of the Louisver family as a concubine. It was clear that the Louisver Marquis's ambition was to gain influence over the adjacent Sooty lands, and he saw the arrangement as a prime opportunity. Afterward, the Louisville Marquis acted as a guardian for Nadia's mother, but his ambitions toward the Suddy house have since faded. Still, Pamela, as the successor, could not afford to be careless. This complex history was the root of the strained relationship between her and her older brother, Frederick. Upon her arrival at the Suddy estate, her father, the current Marquis, sat waiting, his face etched with exhaustion. "Pamela," he said, his voice heavy, "you've returned." She addressed him formally, asking about her mother. The Marquis looked away, telling her to go to the bedroom to see for herself. He admitted fault but insisted he would handle the upcoming subjugation mission, urging her to rest. Pamela, however, understood she could not stand by while her people suffered. In the bedroom, her mother lay still and unconscious. She had no external injuries, but she had been struck on the head. A maid explained the situation to Pamela and Salim. The Marchioness possessed high magical power, which had already healed any visible wounds. Despite this, she remained unconscious. He processed this information, his hand to his chin. Her high magic was keeping her alive, but it was incapable of healing the damage to her brain. She was in a vegetative state. He considered his own reserves. An MP deficiency? He had used some magic to assist their travel, but he still had over 80% remaining. He quickly calculated that to treat the Marchioness's injury, he would need nearly all of his power. He stands by the Marchioness's bedside as her voice suddenly reaches out, asking him to wait. She explains that while the treatment will be delayed, a person with high magic power can endure it, and requests that they first provide her with physical support. Pamela looks on, calling Salim's name in concern. The next day, however, they are to join a monster extermination mission. The following morning, Pamela takes charge. She announces that the monster subjugation unit will head north into the forest, with the Suddy family's 20 knights, led by Frederick, at the vanguard. She declares that she and the others will follow them. Their journey leads them to a small village near the northern forest, reportedly being ravaged by monsters. What they find is a scene of utter devastation. The village has been burned to the ground, and Pamela gasps in horror. The horrific sight is too much for Pamela, who covers her face in despair. Salim watches the scene, his expression hardening as he takes in the silent ruin. As they move through the wreckage, Valerie reports his findings to Salim. He confirms that the villagers were all devoured by monsters and the buildings are mostly safe. The residents, he states, have been completely wiped out. He considers this information, noting that while the bodies are gone, the state of the building seems too orderly for a chaotic monster attack. The scene is unervingly neat. Katia then calls his attention to a nearby door, pointing out a clean, sharp mark. She identifies it as a trace left by a sword. She elaborates, explaining to Salim that the traces of devastation left on the inhabitants were not caused by beasts. Furthermore, she reveals that her sensory magic detected no demonic presence along their path to the village. Her eyes narrow as she delivers her grim conclusion. Based on her long experience as a swordsman, this was not damage caused by monsters. It was a massacre carried out by humans. The realization dawns upon them. They have been drawn into the Suddy family's internal conflicts. Within the Suddy estate, the Marchioness Suddy voiced her concerns about the family's affairs, the engagement between Pamela and Frederick, and the stifling atmosphere that had settled over them. She remarked grimly that it would not be surprising if some terrible incident were to occur. Salim considered her words, his mind racing. He reasoned that if the former Marchioness and Pamela were killed, no one would stand in Frederick's way. However, Frederick lacked the combat prowess for such an act. The line of reasoning seemed flawed until a chilling realization struck him. The Marquis himself had been driven to utter despair. He understood now. The Marquis was no longer thinking of his territory's future or the continuation of his family line. In his desperation, he was capable of sacrificing his own wife and daughter. His grim thoughts were confirmed by Pamela's horrified gasp. She stared at a body, exclaiming that the clean, deep gash could not possibly have been inflicted by a monster. She turned to see Frederick approaching, who coldly explained the situation. He confessed that he and his men had dealt with the parents of a Louisville daughter, and to eliminate the Louisville faction's influence, he had no choice but to kill Pamela's mother. He then looked at Pamela, telling her that her case was different. His meaning became terrifyingly clear as his soldiers moved to surround her. Frederick drew his sword and declared that she would die there. Pamela stared in disbelief, realizing with horror that even her father was part of the plot. As if on cue, the Marquis Suddy appeared, his face a mask of grim resolve. He pointed at his son, proclaiming Frederick as his successor, and commanded him to prove his worth by striking Pamela down. The betrayal shattered her composure. Pamela could only stammer in denial, her mind reeling. She desperately tried to calm herself, remembering that her allies were nearby. Before Frederick could advance, Salim's group sprang into action. He barked orders. Leo was to restrain the Marquis, Katia to engage the knights, while Gilbert and Valerie were to erect a barrier. He then turned his attention to the frozen Pamela, urging her to draw her sword and show Frederick what she was truly made of. His words struck a chord. With a furious cry, Pamela drew her weapon, her eyes blazing with newfound resolve. She declared that for nobles, succession is decided by strength. Frederick sneered, telling her that if she had complaints, she could die unsatisfied. Their blades prepare to meet. She lies defeated on the ground, her sword just out of reach. The duel to decide the succession she reflects with dismay, was meant to be a matter of noble aesthetics. But the victor is not her brother. Instead, Frederick lies unconscious nearby. Salim Bergman stands over him, noting the clear difference in their power. Katia observes that while Frederick is a stubborn noble, he should recover from this on his own. He then asks Katia what their disposition should be for the man trapped within their barrier. She advises against killing him, explaining that the Suddy family has no magical power to spare. It would be more profitable, she suggests, to sell his bloodline to another noble house. Pamela, now on her feet, interjects with a plan. She tells them to restrain everyone and return to the city, assuring them she will take responsibility for confining her father. She adds that some of the knights who accompanied them will also need to be bound. She expresses her gratitude to the group for their help. As Salim prepares a rope, a sudden, violent surge of dark energy erupts from the ground beneath them. The force of the eruption slams against their magical barrier, causing it to crack and splinter. Salim stares in shock, realizing his containment has been breached from the inside. Meanwhile, Leo stands grimly amidst the fallen Suddy knights, his part of the task now complete. The source of the dark power reveals itself, a pair of malevolent eyes, burning with dark intent from within the shadows. This horrifying sight confirms Salim's fears, leading him to a terrible conclusion. He recognizes the signs from a past experience. It is a demon transformation, a being consumed by darkness. Beside him, Pamela's voice trembles as she whispers, "Father." Amidst a field of fallen knights, Leo stands as the sole figure upright, a vision of despair. From a distance, his classmates watch the grim aftermath. Pamela Suddy's voice cracks as she stares, whispering her father's name and questioning what has been done. Her shock gives way to anguish. She cries out, demanding to know why this happened, reminding him that her half-brother and all the knights had followed him. Salim Bergman steps forward, placing a hand on her shoulder and coldly stating that it's her fault for being stubborn. He then turns his gaze to Leo, a sinister smile playing on his lips. He remarks that when his darkness grows too strong, his self-restraint falters, confessing that he simply wished to be left alone. He studies Leo's cursed form, recognizing the power he now wields. Salim muses internally that this is the very power he sought, a force capable of cleansing impurities and crushing any obstacle. He realizes, everything he needed to maintain the Bergman house. His quiet contemplation shatters into a furious roar. He screams at Pamela, accusing her of risking her life for the Bergman family's independence while borrowing power from the Livier family. He demands to know what a carefree student like her could possibly understand about his struggles, yelling for her to be silent. He continues his confession, explaining that he was always inadequate, losing to his brother, the prince, and the empress. He admits his fondness for demons stems from their ability to deny reality. In redoing his life, he found the world set against him, leading him to believe that becoming a demon would grant him the power to shape his own destiny. As Pamela listens, her expression twists in horror. Salim coldly reveals the depths of his depravity. He stole the consciousness of Marquis Suddy, betrayed his wife and daughter, and unleashed demons to annihilate 2 entire villages, all to construct his own twisted, ideal world. Tears stream down her face. She can only whisper her father's name as her hand clenches into a tight, trembling fist. Hearing the confession, Leo erupts with power. He declares that he fights for himself and has no time for the Suddy family's internal strife, refusing to listen to someone who would sacrifice Pamela. As the energy surges, Salim shouts for Katia and Leo. His attack is suddenly intercepted. Valerie and Katia appear in a flash, their swords crossed to block Leo's strike. Behind them, Salim grits his teeth, straining against the force of the impact. He found himself facing not just 2, but 3 former classmates, with Pamela Suddy now joining the fray. Salim, taking command, issued orders with a confident smirk. He instructed one of them to keep their distance and inflict damage from afar, while assigning Pamela to handle the attack squad. Acknowledging that his opponent was now demonic and thus resistant to magic, Salim unleashed a barrage of his own, combining a fireball and an ice bullet in a direct assault. The combined spell, however, slammed into a large, spherical barrier that materialized to protect Leo. Salim's expression soured, finding the development troublesome. Both Valerie and Leo recognized the defensive magic for what it was. It was Katia who had erected the shield, her sword glowing with residual energy. Gilbert watched in astonishment, remarking that he never knew she was capable of such powerful barrier magic. Katia, however, only had eyes for Salim, calling out his name with concern. Salim, unimpressed, dismissed her efforts, declaring her barrier to be full of holes. With a simple gesture, he shattered the magical defense. His demonic features twisting his face, he snarled that such tactics were useless against him. He then commanded his allies to begin a pincer attack. In response, Leo, Katia, and Pamela surged forward in a coordinated assault. From the center of their charge, Salim let out a monstrous roar. The demon-powered man roared in defiance, his fangs bared. For a moment, Pamela wondered if their attack had succeeded, but Salim quickly proved her wrong. He declared it wasn't over, using his own blood to form a defense as his claws extended menacingly. A violent wave of dark energy erupted from his body, blasting his opponent's back. Leo took the brunt of the force, while Valerie and Katia struggled to maintain their footing. Amidst the chaos, Leo moved with blinding speed. He bypassed the others, closing the distance to Pamela in an instant and running her through with his sword. She looked down, her eyes wide with shock and pain. Salim cried out her name in alarm. As Leo withdrew his blade, Pamela crumpled to the ground, her allies looking on with grim resolve. He stood over his fallen opponent, sword still drawn, as Katia and Salim looked on in shock. Salim immediately knelt beside the bleeding Pamela's Suddy, his face a mask of concern. The young master's hand glowed with a soft light as he began to heal Pamela's wound. He looked up at Katia, instructing her to keep Leo's attention focused on her while he administered aid. He cradled Pamela, reassuring her that she would be fine. He urged her to calm down, revealing that he possessed healing abilities she was unaware of. He confessed that he had anticipated she would be incapacitated, explaining that her defeat was a necessary sacrifice for their ultimate victory. While he tended to her, Katia called out his name. Salim acknowledged her, stating that acting as a decoy for a man like Leo was a formidable task. He commanded her to focus all of the general's attention squarely upon herself. The hero, however, had other plans. Ignoring the command, he lunged past Katia, aiming to strike Salim while he was vulnerable. Salim twisted, parrying the blow with his own sword just as Katia cried out Pamela's name in alarm. With their blades locked, Salim ordered his opponent to stop moving. He revealed his trap. His own body had become a conduit for a freezing spell, one that would turn Leo's blood to ice and bring his rampage to an end. The spell's icy grip took hold, and Leo's face contorted in a furious snarl, his fangs bared in defiance. Salim watched him, his expression cold and resolute. But with a surge of power, Leo forced Salim back, shattering the icy prison. He offered a grudging compliment, acknowledging that Salim had done well to trap him, even for a moment. The sheer force of his counterattack sent fractures racing up his blade. With a sharp crack, the sword shattered, its purpose served. The fragments of the blade dissolved into a cloud of glittering dust. The immediate confrontation was over, a narrow victory achieved at the cost of a weapon. In a town square, a group of 4 warriors, Pamela Suddy, Leo, Gilbert, and Katia, stand at the ready, their swords drawn, suggesting a recent or impending conflict. Nearby, Valerie approaches Salim with an expression of relief, reporting that he successfully remained hidden as instructed, waiting for the battle's main obstacle to be neutralized. His relief quickly turns to concern upon seeing blood on Salim's uniform. Salim, however, dismisses his worry, explaining that his body is enhanced and the wound is already healing. He insists it's nothing serious, though his face is noticeably pale. Despite his reassurances, Salim's gaze is sharp as he quietly asks Valerie not to dwell on the matter. Valerie, however, is visibly troubled. He worries that if Salim is seen sympathizing with a major criminal, it would be a lapse in judgment that could bring shame upon the ducal house. Salim looks shocked by the implication, but Valerie quickly apologizes, asking him to forget he said anything. He then passionately declares that it was wrong to bring Salim to such a dangerous place in the first place, insisting he should have remained at the manor. He reaffirms his absolute loyalty, vowing to serve Salim now and always. As their intense conversation unfolds, Pamela approaches, reminding them they are still in the midst of a battle. Salim attempts to lighten the mood, patting Valerie's shoulder and greeting Pamela. Pamela addresses the entire group, suggesting they take a brief rest before walking to a nearby town to secure a carriage for their return. As she speaks, Salim sways, leaning on Valerie for support. He murmurs that he is dizzy from overusing his magic and just needs to rest in the carriage. Later that night, the group arrives at a grand estate. Inside, Salim rests on a sofa, his exhaustion evident, while Valerie remains by his side, watching over him. He finally stirred, his eyes fluttering open. A young woman seated by his bedside noticed immediately, a wave of relief washing over her as she confirmed he was awake. Now dressed in his uniform, he smiled reassuringly, admitting he'd been sleeping so deeply it must have been worrying. He explained that even with his abilities, recovering from the previous day's exertion would take some time. She informed him that he had slept soundly for a full day. Thanks to the prolonged rest, she continued, his magical power had been restored to its peak. With that established, she turned the question back to him, asking about his own well-being. Her gaze remained fixed on him, her expression filled with genuine concern. He looked away, dismissing her worry by stating he was simply healthy. But she knew better. She understood the severity of the injuries he had sustained, and while she was aware of his training, his current condition seemed unnaturally robust. Voicing her thoughts, she stated plainly that his healing magic was not ordinary. His expression hardened as he confirmed her suspicion with a simple, direct agreement. He elaborated, recalling the injury he had suffered. It had been a fatal wound, he explained, one that no healing mage in the entire kingdom should have been able to treat. The implications of his statement settled upon her, her brow furrowing with worry. She realized it would be problematic if this information spread, and quietly asked if he would keep it a secret. He readily agreed. She immediately became more animated, insisting that he was her benefactor and she would never cause him any trouble. Her thoughts then began to race, considering the movements of the great noble houses and her limited knowledge of their internal politics. Cutting through her flustered thoughts, he clarified that while the great nobles were concerned, the true issue was that his own system was simply beyond conventional standards. He explained to a confused Pamela that to avoid causing a stir, he would handle everything and keep it a secret. All she had to do was accept it. She questioned what he meant, asking if she was to do nothing. In a swift motion, he extended a finger toward the unconscious Marchioness Sooty, channeling his power. The energy found its mark, and the Marchioness's eyes slowly fluttered open. The effect was immediate. A notification confirmed the restoration of vitality and a gain of 1,000 experience points. As Salim stood by, the now conscious Marchioness looked at her daughter in confusion, while Pamela could only stammer her mother's name, her eyes wide with disbelief. Pamela rushed forward, crying out that her mother's consciousness had returned. The Marchioness weakly warned her that it was dangerous to be near, but Pamela, overcome with emotion, assured her that everything was all right now. As mother and daughter reunited, Salim explained to Pamela that the Marchioness had simply been weak from MP depletion. He winked, identifying himself as a friend and noting it would take a day for her MP to recover. He then turned to the Marquis, suggesting they leave the two alone and get some rest. Sometime later, Salim was awake and taking tea when Valerie and Leo approached. Valerie asked about his condition, and Salim assured him he was fine after a day of sleep. Valerie expressed his relief, admitting they'd been worried about the magic Salim had used in the treatment. His calm demeanor shifted to one of sharp focus. He questioned why Valerie and Leo had come to see him together. In response, Leo knelt before him. He stated that he would now serve Salim as a member of the Bergman family. The declaration hung in the air, leaving Salim wide-eyed with shock as Leo remained kneeling, his own eyes closed with firm resolve. He stared in disbelief. Leo was actually bowing to him with proper etiquette. He had once thought it would be impossible to teach manners to someone like Leo, who had grown up in a nursing home. Nearby, Valerie noted with satisfaction that his scouting of the hero had been a success. He found the entire situation unexpected. While he had initially thought it unreasonable to force Leo into his service, his perspective had shifted. The recent events at the academy, which exposed the filth of the nobility, made him realize just how precious Salim's life-saving actions were. He now understood with perfect clarity. He declared that he could not let this opportunity to serve such a person pass him by. The gaze he directed at Salim was different now, filled with a new resolve. Salim accepted, acknowledging that with the hero joining his forces, their future would be different. He expressed his gratitude and asked for Leo's support. As summer break began, they recovered their strength and bid farewell to Pamela and the Earl's daughter at their carriage. Pamela asked if they weren't returning to the academy, but Salim explained that he had been appointed to the Bergman territory. Leo, overhearing, asked if that meant he would be going to the Bergman territory as well. He stretched his arms, taking in the fresh air as their journey commenced. He looked down at a letter, recalling Pamela's words as she gave it to him. She had thanked him for his help, admitting that this was all she could offer, as she was unable to provide any official reward. The letter detailed the dire situation of the Sooty family. With both the Marquis and Frederick lost to the demonic plague, the household was in turmoil. Pamela's mother was acting as the head for now, but Pamela herself, still a student, was set to inherit the title. The family they must now rely on is the Louisver family. The letter concluded that Salim's role in the matter was finished, offering a final thanks. Pamela explained that for now, they must concentrate on maintaining the Sooty household. She believed the devil's machinations would continue, making the family's stability their top priority. Juliet, holding the letter, added that it contained the truth of the incident. She then admitted that it was a weakness on their part to say so, but he holds the letter, a silent pact between them. Pamela Sooty explains that as long as it exists, her family will cooperate with House Bergman. She offers it as a form of leverage, a threat to be held over them. He understands her intent, acknowledging the letter's power, but states plainly that he has no intention of ever using it. It is Pamela's sincerity he accepts. The paper in his hand dissolves into shimmering particles of light. Across from him, Pamela offers a deep, formal bow, thanking him for his profound kindness. Moments later, Valerie approaches, scolding him for not behaving like a proper noble. He insists that as the son of a duke, Salim should have considered the maximum benefit for his family and territory, questioning why he didn't exploit the opportunity Pamela presented. He reflects on his past, recalling how this system had forced him to act as a seeker. In that life, he had committed a terrible sin, a future he has now averted. The very thought of exploiting another's weakness in this corrected timeline feels repulsive to him. His somber expression prompts Valerie to ask if he is disappointed. Salim retorts that helping a friend only to receive a threat as collateral is a poor deal. He then clarifies that for the past half-year, he's been acting with the full resolve of Salim Bergman. A slight smile touches Valerie's lips as he affirms his loyalty, stating plainly, "My only master is you, Lord Salim." He corrects him, stating that he relies on Valerie to protect the house, not to serve him personally. He internally notes how the way people, especially Valerie, look at him has changed since he began following the system's directives. He muses that if escape were his goal, he would have fled long ago. Later, he speaks with Leo, admitting he doesn't understand the system, but knows he bears the weight of a great sin from future he rewrote. He explains that for Leo to face the coming crises, he must become the strongest hero possible, and Salim intends to help him unlock his highest potential. He agrees, acknowledging that he is beginning to feel the gravity of the situation. He adds, however, that there is something on his mind, a point of contention he wishes to settle through combat. In a training yard, he tells Leo there are no rules. Magic and swords are both permitted. As they begin to spar, Salim reflects that after 3 months of training together at the academy, he is well acquainted with Leo's fighting style. He recognizes the incoming magical attack is merely a feint, a prelude to a physical strike. He faced the onslaught as Leo unleashed a grand technique, a complex spell combining barrier, wind, and earth magic. As the hero kicked off the ground, he challenged Salim to deal with the swirling vortex of his flame cyclone. Observing the powerful display, he calmly assessed its strength. While formidable, he concluded it was something he could withstand. If he simply focused on defending, he felt no chance of losing. This assessment, however, led to a troubling realization, something he'd first noticed during the battle with the Suddy family. The current Leo lacked the overwhelming, futuristic power he possessed before Salim's return to the past. A new worry began to form in his mind. It seemed that somehow, he was failing in his efforts to properly nurture Leo's growth. This, he thought with a hand to his face, was a troubling development. Leo observes that Salim's skills have increased, and Salim agrees that he is indeed growing stronger. From a short distance, Duke Bergman lets out a booming laugh, declaring that he is witnessing something truly interesting. He strides forward, grabbing their attention. The Duke reveals he's been watching their entire fight and addresses Leo directly, identifying him as the commoner genius his son brought from the academy. With a dismissive tone, he declares that Leo is not stronger than Salim. Salim calmly interjects, stating that he is no match for Leo. His father erupts in fury, roaring at the perceived weakness and lack of spirit in his son's words. He questions how such a person could be the next Duke Bergman. He turns his attention back to Leo, placing a heavy hand on his shoulder. The Duke asks why Leo has not become his son's vassal, confessing that he has long felt his own son was too soft and inadequate to inherit the family name. Salim remains silent, his thoughts racing. He reminds himself not to be rash. To defeat the Demon Lord, he needs powerful allies and a stable house, things he cannot risk yet. He recognizes this man, his father, as the one who drove him to despair in his previous life. Leo speaks up, his gaze firm. He explains to the Duke that it is precisely because he serves the young master that he must ask him to stop speaking ill of him. Intrigued, the Duke smirks, telling Leo that if he wishes to make such a claim, he should prove it with his strength. He readily accepts the challenge, drawing his sword with a sharp sound. Salim quickly steps between them, raising a hand to halt the confrontation. He pleads with them to stop, calling his father's actions unreasonable. But Leo is resolved. He declares his intent to fight, his focus unwavering. He knows that while he may be the strongest of his generation now, he is still far weaker than the future version of himself who had once overwhelmed Salim. The Duke watches with a knowing grin. He reflects on his own regression, remembering how Leo's actions had awakened him. In the future, he had to change his ways to prevent ruin, but to forge the hero Leo needs to become, his old, belligerent self is far more suitable. The irony is not lost on him. With a sudden roar, he unleashes a torrent of dark, chaotic energy. The force of the blast sends Salim flying backward. Leo can only stare, stunned into silence, as his opponent is engulfed in an overwhelming display of raw power. He laughed with wild abandon, unleashing a torrent of power that he declared to be on the level of a natural disaster. He challenged Leo to match his full-scale assault, a feat that Salim recognized as powerful enough to shatter the castle's protective barriers. Caught in the swirling vortex of energy, the young hero stood his ground, a look of fierce determination on his face. Watching the display, Salim raised a magical barrier, realizing that Leo's strength was the type that grew in response to his emotions. As the maelstrom of power subsided, the Duke roared with laughter, proclaiming that Leo had considerable potential and would be enjoyable to train. He then made a sudden decision. He would take Leo to the borderlands during the summer break, much to Salim's surprise. He urged Leo to go, explaining that while he himself had duties to the people, this was a better opportunity for Leo than simple monster extermination. Understanding the sentiment, Leo agreed, acknowledging that he wanted to become stronger. Sometime later, as his father and Leo prepared to depart, Salim questioned the timing. He noted they were leaving half a month earlier than planned and asked if something had happened. His father turned, his expression suddenly serious. He bluntly asked Salim why he was doing this, questioning if he truly intended to execute his foolish plan. The Duke revealed he knew because Leo had become far too strong. The young lord processed this, his mind racing. He understood that if he simply served the family, he would eventually be claimed by the royal house. To counter this, he needed to establish stronger connections beforehand. As Leo's power grew, it would draw attention, making it necessary to arrange a marriage alliance for him. The Duke continued, voicing his own conclusion. Forcing a marriage on Leo, a commoner, would only breed resentment. A better solution, he judged, would be to adopt Leo as his own son. Selim considered the proposition. If Leo were adopted, he would become a member of a great noble house. This would place him in a far stronger position than any ordinary noble, making him a much better candidate for alliances and preventing future trouble. He concluded it was a good idea. He begins by telling Leo to prepare his equipment, pointing out that the hero was only wearing his standard student uniform from the royal branch. A flustered Leo questions how Selim could have possibly won against him while he was in such simple cloth attire, but Selim simply dismisses the notion. His father, Duke Bergman, overhears and declares that unacceptable, proposing they acquire some silk-guard leather from the south. Selim readily agrees, adding that he will personally design new enchantments for Leo's boots and gloves, tailored to his movements for more efficient power conversion. Leo stammers, overwhelmed by the mention of such expensive materials. He then reassures the stunned hero, promising that the Bergman family will not be stingy with the costs of his enhancement. With a booming laugh, the Duke adds his own declaration. He will raise Leo to be the strongest warrior of their time. Later, Valerie explains to his still-dazed Leo that it is common for nobles to act as patrons and collect talented individuals. He remarks that while Selim was not like this before, he now seems to be taking after his father. Leo, still processing the situation, simply resolves to leave matters in their hands. Selim makes a direct and earnest promise to him, vowing to take full responsibility for making him strong. Stronger even than the future version of Leo he remembers. Elsewhere, Nadia Louiver walks with another young noblewoman through a grand hall. After suggesting they erect wards against eavesdropping and theft, the ponytailed woman asks if it is finally time for Nadia to tell her the truth of what happened. She begins to recount the events, confirming that Selim's forces eliminated their enemies entirely. Marquis Suddy, his son Frederick, and their 20 knights were all killed. Her companion realizes with dawning horror that this means Selim and his retainers were never wiped out in a demon attack, as was reported. They were all safe. The ponytailed woman expresses her shock, stating that while she knew the situation was dangerous, she never imagined their combat strength had grown to such a degree. Nadia gravely agrees, admitting that if Selim and his companions had not intervened, both she and Pamela would have certainly perished. Her voice fills with emotion as she continues, explaining that it wasn't just her life at stake. If her father had succeeded in his dark conspiracy, the people of their domain would have suffered terribly. She then reveals a secret. Her own mother had been fatally wounded during the conflict, but Selim had treated her, and in return, she had promised Nadia to keep silent. She clutches her head in distress, lamenting that Selim performed these incredible deeds without demanding anything in return, simply leaving for his own territory afterward. Nadia listens calmly before replying that she understands. With this, she declares, the future of the Louiver house will be entrusted to her. She considered the implications of the secret she now held. With this knowledge, they could eliminate the Louiver family's interference and submit to House Bergman. She understood now that the Suddy family had withdrawn from their conflict to prevent widespread chaos, a realization that left her in awe. She couldn't believe such a noble family existed in this world. Her companion watched as Nadia became overwhelmed, blushing as she thought of Selim. Nadia fretted over how she could possibly face him when the second term began, certain that he felt nothing special and would greet her with a simple, friendly smile. The thought left her completely flustered and without confidence. The ponytailed noblewoman chuckled, reminding Nadia that she had warned her before to be wary of handsome men. Nadia, still flustered, conceded that this must be why Selim had become friends with her in the first place. Nadia let out a soft sigh. Her companion smiled, saying she was looking forward to seeing him again in the second term, and Nadia quietly agreed. Elsewhere, as the long summer vacation drew to a close, Selim reflected on his time. He had come to greet Amanda before returning to the capital, feeling as though he had only just returned home. He found himself with Amanda, who reassured him that students were always coming and going and that he would be back again in the winter. She recalled how just a few months prior, the entire domain had gathered to see him off to the academy. To her, his return after only 3 months was a welcome sight. He took a sip from his mug as Amanda continued, noting that for an old woman like her, a month or even a year passes in an instant. She then playfully chided him for fussing over her so much, asking if he had gained a brother. He clarified that it was not a blood brother, but a sworn brother, the commoner hero, Leo. Selim explained that Leo was a strong second-year student at the academy, and that through various connections, he was gathering powerful and talented individuals for the ducal house. Leaning closer, he conspiratorially asked if she thought he was planning to take over the country with this newfound power. He quickly dismissed the notion. His goal wasn't to sell out the country, but to use his power to prevent the entire nation from falling into a terrible state. Amanda listened, remarking that he sounded like a saint. Selim elaborated that he was raising the skill level of adventurers to fight against the demon realm, a task that could also be seen as him giving them direction. Amanda considered his words, stroking her chin. She called it a magnificent undertaking. To prevent a bad outcome, she mused, he must be looking toward the future with hope. Her words about the future linger in Salim Bergman's mind. He recalls memories from before he rewound time, a past where he failed, and his resolve hardens. He is determined to change what is to come. He is certain that this time, the future will be different. Guided by the system, he has been raising his seeker level, and he can already feel that the way people perceive him is changing. This train of thought is interrupted when Granny Amanda suddenly presents him with a small bottle. He asks what it is, and she explains it's motion sickness medicine for his upcoming school trip by boat. He insists he doesn't get seasick, but she retorts that strong nobles like him shouldn't even consider bringing servants along. He smiles warmly at her gruff concern, thinking to himself how kind she is. He accepts the bottle with a word of thanks. Flustered, Amanda insists she just doesn't want him to fall ill while she isn't around to look after him. Meanwhile, at the royal capital, others also contemplate the future. They acknowledge that the academy there is more tumultuous than the one in their own territory, with many matters to attend to. Even so, they agree that the ominous buds of the demon's invasion must be dealt with swiftly. To protect what is important, they must start by addressing the matters closest to them, one by one. Salim stands with his companions, Leo, Gilbert, and Valerie, ready for the challenges that lie ahead.